Hello everyone and welcome to State of the Realm, your weekly Final Fantasy XIV podcast. As we said in our 5.1 impression, so 2 weeks ago we would be going 2 weeks without a show, but we are back and talking about the latest topic, Alexander Ultimate, which had a hell of a world first race that will be a very big topic for today, as well as the fight itself. But you don't want to hear me anymore, so let's get started. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Mr. Happy Poker. Of course, joining me is Slyh, who I don't even want to do all the nicknames for. I'm just glad to see him again after 2 weeks. Hi.
Hi, we back, boys. We back.
Yeah, we back. Slyh be monster hunting, he be 14ing, whatever that means. And now we're good, we're back. We're here, we exist.
Yeah,
and next week we get to look dumb because I'm going to make sure Ethos has the stuff ready, see if he remembers what we talked about. So we get to be dumb next week, woohoo!
I mean, that's every week.
Yeah, that's true. But the main reason you're here, Alexander Ultimate has been killed at this point a few times over, but we have members from the World First group. They have been guests on the show before and thus need no introduction. We have the Black Mage Supreme, Sfia, as well as the Healer Supreme, Kio. How are you two doing?
Doing fantastic.
Fantastic?
Doing great.
Weight of the world off my shoulders now that the...
Wait, would you call them supreme or would you call them perfect?
Oh.
And you don't like them when I do it. Slyh?
I just had to
That's it. We're back. We're back for 2 weeks. We're back after 2 weeks, and you became me.
Yeah.
That's bad. That's the kind of show it's going to be, everyone. Oh, it is good to have both of you on the show. Obviously, we have quite a bit to discuss regarding Alexander Ultimate. And let's just get into it. Before we get started, though, of course, we want to thank our patrons who have been supporting us over on Patreon. And I have a funny story for all of you regarding that I would like to share at the start of the show. So as Slyh, you know, we thank our patrons every week. Our patrons of Darkness, Khuja and Kurenai, who we do their shout-outs at the end. You want to know something I found out during Alexander Ultimate Prog?
What's up?
Patreon hadn't paid me since May of 2017. So I've got it now though.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Huh? Like 2017, as in 2 years ago.
2.5.
Jeez.
All right. Jesus.
The good news is that's been sorted and we're all good now. So thank you. Now all at once for the last 2.5 years. Slyh, that means our incident was...
No.
No.
That does not give you an excuse to do that shit again.
No, but I'm saying that means it wasn't even Patreon money. It was just money that came right out of me.
It was you. Jesus.
Oh, man. Okay. But also, of course, Steel Series. We do our monthly giveaways. There will be a new one under the video tomorrow as the other one has expired today. I will be sending an email to the winner for that because we're probably going to have a long show. And my raid group wants me to be on time, which is 6:30 Pacific. So let's get started, shall we?
All right. So I'll go ahead and ask this since you all have done it. After everything's said and done, where would you rank this in terms of ultimates?
Wow, you're just going right for the jugular with that, Slyh. Slyh wants to know right down to it immediately where you rank it.
How much do you know about this fight? Have you been watching a lot, or?
I've been watching.
Okay. So, for a very long time in our progression, I thought this is both the hardest and best, by a very long margin. That was diminished slightly by one thing in the fight. The hardest is still there, absolutely, to me. I think if you ask all the people in my team, it varies from person to person, but still the hardest. But how great it was as a fight was slightly taken down just a notch. But it's still an amazing fight, and I still think probably the best fight in the game. It just missed the mark with one specific thing. But it's great. It's actually fucking fantastic.
Okay. Kio?
So originally I was saying it was the hardest. I was firmly in the hardest camp. now that we're a little further away from our clear, I think I'd say it's pretty close to even with UCOB in terms of execution difficulty.
Okay.
But it has the single most difficult mechanic in any ultimate in it, which is Wormhole. I don't think.
I still think Gavel's way worse than Wormhole. I mean, it's real. I know. We could have that discussion. I'm way more nervous during one than I am the other, personally. That's just how I feel, though. I want to say that there's two different Slyh. You went straight for the how does it rank. I actually was going to take that question in another direction later, but I guess I might as well go for it now. There's two different ways to rank a fight. There's how difficult it is to prog and how difficult it is to execute.
Right.
So I'm curious. You're saying, probably the hardest. You think it's the hardest. With recency bias aside, because it's fresh on your mind, and you haven't had to re-clear it weeks and weeks like the other ones yet, do you think it's a harder to prog, or that it will be harder to, or that it will still be difficult to repeat?
Good question.
Knowing the secret, I think it's easier than UCOB was to prog, but it's not far off, and it's definitely more fun, in my opinion. I think the fun factor for T was way up there, but it can't be understated. Like, I progged through UCOB through many different groups, and it is a massive challenge. There's a lot going on in that fight. So,
have you now, Kio?
Yeah.
Have you
I haven't done that
with
same thing with T? Yeah.
Oh man. For anyone wondering, Kio made a makeshift group to do one UCOB clear that I was in after his 4,000 clears that he had done prior and simultaneously, from what I understand. That's how much of a beast Kio is. Sfia, what about you? Prog versus repeat? Because you actually progged on Black Mage, which when we last spoke and you said you got to do it for Eden, you said you didn't know if you'd ever do it again. But it happened.
Yes, it did. I said that if it stayed as broken as it is, I'd keep playing it in prog. And it didn't get nerfed. Things didn't get buffed enough to push it from that position. So here I am again, having... I've been just in a state of mental exhaustion for the last few days after having to think so much and so actively all the time for that long. But in terms of progging it and difficulty, it was fairly Black Mage friendly, but outside of that specifically, it was, I think, possibly... Okay, there's very big highs and lows in terms of the difficulty of it, right? You can go through Inception the first time and just smoke it and it's easy, too easy for a very specific reason. Or you get to Wormhole and you just think, what the hell is this? It has the right type of punishment, I think, for what an ultimate should be, which hits the mark way better than UCOB. So I think it's harder to prog than any of the other ones, except maybe Uwu, because Blind Uwu day one was something else entirely. I don't think it was the most difficult, it was just different. You have to take that kind of out of the equation. This one was, I can only really compare it to UCOB in that regard.
Yeah, so when referring to Uwu prog, you are specifically referring to those who did it day one, not the people who after. And I'd assume you'd have to talk about pre-public knowledge of one of the mechanics for this versus pre-public knowledge of one of the mechanics for
Exactly.
Uwu. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The mystery was clearly more impactful this time. Sorry.
Yeah. If you were to go through with strats already known, I think it would be about the same in terms of difficulty to progress as UCOB. But I think you'd have a lot more fun doing it. They're both good fights, but I think this one is more active. And it makes you play better more often. It's just the level of punishment is higher.
All right. Well, we've got your general thoughts on it, but obviously that's not the only thing we're here to talk about, or I'd say goodbye.
Nope.
So I guess we should probably start phase by phase, because...
Hang on.
Wait, okay, Slyh wants to take the reins. Slyh's like, I've been away for 2 weeks. Cut loose. What are you doing, Slyh? What are you doing?
Yeah, so a word that keeps coming up is thoughts. Thoughts
per second.
Yes. Where did this name come from? I'm curious about that.
Did you take that one, Kira?
It's tough. See, we mulled over a name for a really long time. I think it was actually a sort of a last-second decision to take the name Thoughts Per Second. We were just Radiance for a while, like raid name Radiance. We didn't really have a name. It was only in the last couple days leading up to Prague, I think. We were joking about what name did we send to the Frosty spreadsheet, because we hadn't settled on one. But I don't actually remember what made us decide Thoughts Per Second.
Did it not have anything to do with all thoughts?
I had nothing to do with that.
it didn't actually.
Nothing to do with all thoughts.
It's a good little tie-in, but no, unfortunately. We actually used the phrase a lot before we even decided it was a team name. We hadn't even put two and two together that, why not do that? But it was kind of like something to keep in mind when making decisions about what we'd do in Prague. So it would be, do we take the job which does a little bit less damage, but you don't have to use your brain? Lower the TPS, right? Thoughts per second, keep it low. Focus on what you got to learn instead of what you're doing in the moment. It's all about that, and then that just turned into a meme, which became something else in Prague itself.
Classic underthink.
I'm definitely using that now. Lower your TPS.
Yeah, you already got people debuff. Now you got your TPS.
It's funny because honestly, it's something that hasn't been quantified too well. When we talk about consistency of pulls, people thinking about later phases leads to so many early phase wipes. You're thinking about the prog point, and then you screw up Living Liquid. Happens all the time. Oh man, sorry, I was thinking about Wormhole. And so the mantra actually became really useful in prog. Like, it actually had a meaning. The thoughts per second was a factor in your consistency in the early phases. And if we could clear our minds and focus, it usually kept consistency high.
Clear your mind.
State of zen.
Wow.
Just turning your brain completely off and just letting muscle memory take the wheel for a couple of phases.
All just ultra instincts. Just no brain.
I think it's more like one little part of the brain. That's all you're allowed to use. Just that one little bit which gets through right here. Then you can use the rest of it. That's fine.
Yeah, I know a good mantra for a lot of groups. Not in terms of ultimate, but in terms of just any general prog is between certain phases. Okay, deep breaths. Take it in. Get ready.
Don't you guys say that in your world first kill? Somebody go, just deep breaths. Going into Perfect Alexander.
And we actually did take deep breaths.
I know, I heard
I think everybody did when they said that.
It's important. Good. Just mentally reset yourself. It's a really stressful event doing this. It's probably not thought about enough, but it's so mentally taxing. And physically as well. Like when I finished the end of whatever day it was, I went and lay down. I just realized I was aching everywhere from being so tense and just so in the zone the whole time, because it's just stressful. You're under stress the whole time.
Right.
I know it's been beaten to death already, but we talk about consistency as being important in prog, and a lot of people, even today, even though it's been beaten to death, still undervalue just how important it is to get to your prog point as much as humanly possible. That solving what to do at that prog point is actually less important than hitting it consistently. And on Thursday, I think what I'm most proud of is we had 3 pulls in a row where we hit Perfect Alexander all 3 pulls on Thursday without any wipes before. And that's so good for data, for getting everything we needed out of that phase so that we could start making guesses and theories. And we'd go AFK in town for 30 minutes looking back at footage and talking about strategy.
Well, you brought us to an important point, because while I was going to go through the fight phase by phase, and we will do that, because I think that answering the whole fight question that Sly proposed at the beginning, I think it's a little easier to look at all the individual pieces and look at how they compare to the old ultimates in their prog. You brought up a good point in that Thursday you were having those discussions, and by Friday evening it was beaten. Now, Sfia knows probably, you were aware too, Kio, because we had a bit of a discussion about it on stream last night, that I have been obsessing over the world first time versus what the world second time, which has just happened in the last few hours. Shout out to Moof, who did it live on stream, world second, just ahead of another JP group that came within minutes later. So we have had our world second and world third at this point, both. That was crazy. It was over on Friday. I woke up Saturday morning and I was like, what?
Huh?
All right, I'm sure. I guess it's not as bad as I thought. There'll probably be a second kill, like 12 hours. Day passes. Wow, that's really surprising. Any minute now. The whole weekend just like that. I kept sending Sfia DMs like, yo, do you know it's been like this long?
It was surprising to me to begin with. But then as time went on, I started to realize sort of what we'd done without trying to sound arrogant about it. Like just how well we played and how difficult the content was kind of hit me all after Prague. And watching other people do it.
And what about you, Kio? Because for you guys in particular, it must have been hilarious to see that nobody had figured out the heart prior to, I believe it was one ace who was the first ones to publicly stream the heart mechanic we will talk about a bit later. So what was going through your mind that whole weekend, just like, oh, I'm waiting on that second kill?
At first I had the same experiences as Sfia. I mean, there was the exhaustion right after the clear, the disbelief waking up and thinking it must be coming soon. And then I started to realize what an amazing experience we were having. Like each day, Saturday and Sunday, our entire group would just get onto the voice comms in the raid channel and we would just watch the prog. And granted, that's similar. We have those kinds of experiences. Every time we clear the fight, we go watch people stream. But this was literally a whole group event, and it was the first time. I've progged world progged since Gordius, pretty much every tier. And this is the first time that had ever happened where we were united just watching the phenomenon, and it was really something. I feel like we let this special event happen where the world race was still tense for the first time in ages after the first clear, and it was great. It was just fun to watch the community go wild with the theories, cheer on the streamers without having the secrets revealed. And I'm just glad we did it. I had a blast.
What I think made it even more cool is that while watching, we knew there was a wall coming up. And we'd already gone over that wall. We got past it. So we got to watch people suffer just like we suffered, and it was just so therapeutic.
For way longer, though.
Yeah, I want to say lucked out a little bit, but also we're very intuitive with how we did things. But it did take people a lot longer than we expected it to, especially given the number of people that were throwing their brains at it.
I'd like to make a correction. It was Moof that had first publicly streamed it. I had only seen the one ace clip, so that was my mistake. I just wanted to add that correction there. Yeah. And so the world second clear was, about 80, 85 hours? I don't know, down to the minute what it was. It was Friday, 11/26. It was like, what, two and a half hours ago for the world second? So somewhere in the grass, just short of 85 hours. That, so for some statistics out there, that is far longer than UCOB, which I think we calculated out to be 37 hours, 10 minutes, Sfia, when we had our discussion. And that was the longest one. Uwu was only 11 hours. So it more than doubled the time between world first and world second for UCOB. Not only that, the world second did actually take longer than the Uwu world second, which was at 5 days and 23 hours, if I'm not mistaken, whereas this took, 7 days and like 12 hours or something like that in total for the second one. So quite a few interesting things. I think a lot of people saw the world first clear time being in that first 3.5 days or almost 4 days, and really the internet gets loud when something's beaten quickly. Let's put it that way, as I'm sure you two are very well aware of at this point.
Yeah.
A lot of disbelief that it was taking so long. Do you really think absolutely nobody else had figured out this heart mechanic until it was publicly streamed? I couldn't believe it. I refused to believe it until Moof got world second. I was like, nobody else? Only them? So it was crazy.
There was a single tweet that I saw of a JP group.
Is this what you're looking for?
The buff on 2 people. Is this what you're looking for? And I'm assuming that they were a group who started behind everyone else and were just going through things and thought, let's mess around and see if we can find this thing that everyone's struggling with. And they found it, and they did the best thing. And if this ever reaches them, I want to thank them so much for not making it public at that point in time. Because that made everyone's viewer experience so much better. And everyone's prog experience better as well, getting to actually bash their heads against that wall.
All right.
Everyone throwing the Twitch chats, just ideas, just rapid fire being thrown, like in the JP Twitch chats and also American Stream Twitch chats. It's, it must be this, cat this, heart that, tower baby, debuffs in the burn phase. Just everybody was throwing suggestions. I was surprised that my crackpot theory didn't show up in there anywhere. The glow, but someone talking about that. But that's not my theory. I can't take credit for that. But yeah.
All right. Well,
great.
Well, you've had the opportunity to watch it all unfold after finishing over the course of the last several days. You've been on one podcast, Mog Talk, where you had to keep your mouth shut. Very, very, very difficult thing to do, I'd imagine.
But now you get to say everything.
Go nuts as we're talking about this.
Go nuts. So let's kind of get right into it. I know you want to talk phase by phase, Mike, but I want to take it day by day, which we'll take it phase by phase eventually. All right. So the very first day, before servers go live, there had to be meetings going, things like that. Everybody like up early. What went on like right before the patch hit?
It's the usual pre-prog stuff, right? You're getting in there, you're just ultimately making sure everyone's ready to go. You prepped sleep for the few days before that to make sure you're waking up at the right time, which is miserable being a Kiwi, by the way. You got to wake up at like 9 p.m. And then it's pretty much just making sure everyone is there and ready to go. Because as soon as the servers go live, you need to be in there and you need to just not stop. You need to have your whole life sorted for the next indefinite amount of time until you get out. That's pretty much what your life is pre-prog. It's making sure that you have to do absolutely nothing outside of necessities until you clear.
And in a tier potentially this long, that's even more daunting. You essentially had to collectively decide as a group, how long are we going to go hard for? And, for most groups, including ours, it was about a week. And people were likely to go back to work on Monday or Tuesday. But, basically preparing that week and making sure that you hit the ground running that day one, fully rested, gotten some food, you've cleaned up, everything you can do to prepare and psych yourselves up, like reminding ourselves what we already knew about the fights, reminding ourselves about mechanics that we'd practiced, every little thing we could possibly do to make it so when you go into that fight, you're ready to go. And we knew Living Liquid was first, so, refreshers on it. It could be Ferrofluid, it could be, tornadoes, there could be Embolus. Just be ready, look around the arena, get ready to go. It's great.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. So when servers go live, you get in, Living Liquid's first. Everybody knows it. Did that kind of change anything? Change how you kind of thought anything about Living Liquid, or did you have to kind of unlearn things as you went on?
Some things, yeah. It was all familiar, but with a twist, right? That's kind of what Living Liquid was. Everything was, you knew what it was, but it behaved a little bit differently, or you had to use it in different ways, or things they had an extra effect attached to them. So it was more or less just taking what you already knew and changing it a little bit or expanding on it. Which
Go ahead.
Wondering why the damn Protean jets.
Why the tank died every pull in the opener.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
is he dying?
Yeah, the Protean jets, that one confused us for a little bit.
Oh, it confused us too. But actually progressing through Living Liquid itself was not so bad. We spent a lot of time preparing in that fight, just the regular Savage version, with obscene restrictions on our gear and item level and stuff. So we knew how to play the mechanics that came at us. It was just a matter of solving them first and figuring out how the new interactions worked.
I've got a question, and I don't think this one surprises Kio at all, coming from me. Anything in Gordius that you either missed or expected to see but didn't? And I know one name that's about to pop up.
Stole my question.
Too bad, you got to ask the last one.
I'm not sure I understand. Things that
Things that you were expecting to pop up that didn't. What mechanics that did you expect to see in Living Liquid that did not appear?
You mean Digititis?
I do mean Digititis. I mean, to be fair, you could also ferrofluids technically weren't there either. That surprised me.
Yeah. Definitely those two. So Digititis and ferrofluid were surprised, especially ferrofluid. Digititis is sort of a little esoteric. I'm not surprised that one didn't show up really, but ferrofluid was a big shock because that's sort of iconic to that fight. So was surprised. Also, like, why are these dolls here? This isn't A4. Hello. But I'm glad we practiced that as well. So
I actually thought a lot about Digititis and how it would fit into this fight, and I kind of realized that all of the mechanics in this fight are very positioning and movement based already. So all that Digititis would be doing is just adding more of the same, right? And it wouldn't really feel like it's being constructive to the encounter as a whole, because it's already got all of the stuff that Digititis tests, especially in the next phase.
Yeah, that was my reasoning probably. When I got to the second phase, I was like, this might be why Digititis isn't here. It's a pretty good reason. Yeah, even Wash Away. I was half expecting Wash Away even to appear, because Wash Away Digititis was a monster, even as such an early mechanic back in Gordius. And the dolls, yeah, those dolls are run killers. Those little guys are bastards.
I hear that from every group except my own, so I don't know what people are going through. I'm not sure what sort of nasty ass, like, people we got trying to pad on 7 dolls at the same time. I don't know, man. But
you know what I know? So you want a great example of something? So our summoner, sometimes he can't get his carbuncle to properly switch target, so it takes longer. Sometimes he direct crits everything, and it dies way faster, and then it still has dots on it. And sometimes a samurai just Madares it from 80% to 0 in one hit.
Jeez.
We ran into some. I play dancer, so I'm like, I can press any button I want as long as it's not standard step, and this isn't a problem. Every other job is like, don't full thrust, don't.
That's maybe I'm a little privileged in that I play literally a base crit black mage. I have not a single extra point in crit from gear. So that kind of helped in terms of keeping mine consistent, but my whole team was really consistent with it. So maybe people just need to learn to stop pushing their buttons at very specific times.
I remember just seeing Gwen being like, I hate these things. Just on Twitter. Every time someone talked about the fight, he's like, I hate these dolls. I hate them.
No, I think controlled DPS is a very important player skill to have. And A8S, preparing through that, prepared us really, really well for that. So dolls they were never really an issue. I think we had a couple of wipes because I personally direct crit them 3 times in a row, but I've got 5% crit. So that was, I think, twice ever.
Yeah, it was uncommon.
So with Living Liquid, how long would you say it took you to get through the first time, not consistently?
No, we weren't doing great. Like, we was going to talk about, we had, our 9th man was watching streams while we were playing, and as far as our Living Liquid clear time, I don't think we were significantly ahead or behind the streams. I think we were, if anything, a little bit behind. But we didn't actually start to take a lead until later phases, where we started to get ahead of the pack.
Okay.
So, I don't remember exactly when we cleared it, if you do, Sfia. I don't remember.
Where we cleared Living Liquid?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell you exactly. I know more or less the milestones we were day to day, but that's about it.
Now it's gonna
Living
bug
Liquid,
you.
I think, took us longer than it should have. We weren't ahead. We weren't, I don't think, significantly behind, but our 9th man was saying, this is coming next, which means obviously other people are there that are streaming, so
Yeah,
cool.
The J kick. We actually didn't know about the J kick until it was Slyh said, "Oh, there's a J kick coming. I saw it on the stream." Yeah, because we hadn't hit it yet after the limit cuts.
Which is, by the way, an enormous vibe check. You get through limit cut, and you're like, "Finally, we did limit cut right," and then boom, everyone's dead. Yeah, great.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sly, got anything else for this part? What do you got?
Oh no, I was about to ask you. What was your
I'm ready to move on to Limit Cut, man. Oh, my experience with Living Liquid?
Yeah.
This isn't about me, this is about them, but I play a ranged physical DPS that has no dots. You understand how bored I am in most of these phases. Just like, please don't let everything burn around me. I'm Omega lol Pepega job. Nothing concerns me. Just please, please don't die. Don't. Dancer's really fucking easy in that fight, man. It's really fucking easy.
Its optimization is effectively exactly the same as any other single target fight, right?
Well,
Outside of
actually,
the situations where you just want to pull cleave for certain situations.
Yeah, it's actually really nice because Dancer essentially has a single target 1-2 and an AoE 1-2, and they are interchangeable, and they both interact with the job gauge in exactly the same way. So I essentially just never stop hitting my 2-part combo unless I'm on the doll or there's like a massive differential. I have 2 AoE OGCDs. All my dances are AoE. So I just cleave. Every phase that there's cleaving, I'm just cleaving everything.
Yeah, the first half of this fight, well, the first 2 phases at least, are incredibly multi-dot friendly. So I think that groups that ran like we did, where we had a black mage, a summoner, and a bard, like just smoked those damage checks, even with like large amounts of discomfort because it was so early. But if you ran things like a dancer and a ninja, which can't double dot anymore because of that fancy Shadow Fang button they've got, it slowed things down a little bit for them. Their damage wasn't as good, although Ninja's cleave is actually really crazy good with the way new ninjutsu. But in the first half of the fight, your job selection could make a really big difference in terms of how quickly you could meet those checks while still being uncomfortable with the phase.
That's why I gave my dance partner to the summoner. I was like, you are the other half of my DPS. Okay? You're my 5%. Thank you very much. Then we get into the transition, which it's weird because I look back at all of the ultimates, and the only other transition I've really figured is worth talking about is Grand Octet, which for all intents and purposes is the transition into the ad phase from Bahamut. All the rest are like, Heaven's Fall hits, and then there's some AoE splashes and a tank buster comes down. A little more involved than most. Bahamut has the tank LB3 or LB2 with the fireball and the pulsing damage. But then you get where it's like, yeah, Titan hit the ground. Be far away. And Ifrit's like, there's one safe spot, I'm done. And that's it. That's the whole transition. Then we have Limit Cut pop up here, and everyone's like,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can hear Arthur screaming.
Arthur's gave me a new favorite Arthur's quote when he asked if you can't, it was something like, if you can't see the number over your head, how are you going to find a woman's G-spot? It was something along those lines that he yelled at his group. Somebody can get me the exact quote, but that was, something along those lines for Arthur's,
Please tell me someone clipped this.
Oh, it's 100% clipped. And if there's someone in the Twitch chat who is a sub who has it, if you're not a sub, ask for permission. But yeah, that's Arthur's is a gold mine of quotes from Prague every time. It's wonderful. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So talk. Okay. So talk me through the transition, please.
Limit Cut. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yes.
It took about 3 pulls getting there for someone to say, "Gee, I wish this was different." But no, it wasn't. We tried a couple of things, and then we tried to be North America. So what did we do? We ran in a circle around the edge of the room. Just brute force mechanics. Yeah.
That's the North American strat. Is to
Yes.
just run in a circle.
Brain off. Just auto run. Let's go. Let's see what happens if we do this, and then just make it work. And it did. We found a strat which actually was very nuanced for being a Mario Kart, and it worked really well. I think that's the first step to high consistency in the fight, is getting through Limit Cut every time. Every time. You don't want a difficult strat that sends you... Because I saw some GIFs when I woke up on day 2 on Twitter, that had people like crisscrossing across the room, and like this person goes out now, and then they run to the other side of the. It's just an absolute mess. Just go to the sides and just run in a circle.
That statement hit home with me because what you're referring to is 1-2 north, everyone else south, 5-6 cross, then 7-8 back south again. Which is what I've been doing, and not what I opted into, but what was decided on. I think that once you've done it, they're both pretty clean, but one of them looks way better no matter what. And that's I'm assuming you're referring to the 4-on-4, the 4-and-4 groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We estimated about 450 pulls, and so maybe 30, 20 of those were living liquid only. So that means every time after that, poor Ninja Shindaneko Hansha was saying 1, 2, 5, 6 north.
Yes,
And I swear, he would be dreaming that. Nah, just 1, 2, 5, 6 north. 1, 2, 5, 6 north. Every pull.
That was the
Until
one
the
thing
time.
that was the one problem with the strat, is people would forget which numbers go north because it's not in an order, right? You had to skip over 3 and 4. And so people would be like, they get like 6 and they'd be like, wait, I go south. Wait, no, that's north. So Shin just started, that was his mantra every time we got there. 1, 2, 5, 6 north. And it became consistent every time. It was great.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big wall for some people still. It's weird. It feels like Living Liquid could still destroy a few groups just from frustration of being just wiping there randomly, and then getting the transition and wiping there randomly, because somebody wants to play Legacy and turn around at some point. Any issues with Legacy camera users by any chance?
I don't think so. Maybe.
I remember one time I taunted them saying standard is best during our limit cuts because somebody did that. But it was like ever.
Okay, so maybe once or twice, but it wasn't like a recurring issue. I guess it couldn't be, otherwise how would you prog that quick?
And no, it wasn't. I think it happened once that somebody turned around due to Legacy. Almost our entire group is using Legacy. I think it's like 2 of us using standard. Myself included.
Scary for me. I'm a right-click strafer. I'm a QWES player. I don't know how to live any other life.
Seems alien to me.
Played a lot of WoW, so for me it was pretty normal. And any other like tab target, that was just my go-to. Even stuff like Blade and Soul did the same thing. I don't know why. Just couldn't stop myself. Then we get to phase 2, and everyone's nightmares came true. All at once, I feel, when it came to this phase.
We did not expect that. Straight out the bat.
Wait, you didn't expect it at all, or so soon?
We didn't expect right then in that way that. So we knew J-Kick was coming. Like, okay, it's Brute Justice phase. It wasn't just Brute Justice phase.
It was Brute Justice and his friend Cruise Chaser.
That phase was a mess. There was like progging that and not knowing anything about it. It was just a mess. Like, what do we do with these Nissies? Just let them fall off. We don't know what they're for, and just like when we finally had to keep them, the traffic issues, people accidentally passing, like it was a struggle. And then like the enumerations, solving that, we initially had like different groups before we settled on a strat. It was a mess in the beginning. It was a mess for a while, but it's a great phase for like planning and strategizing and teamwork, probably more than any other phase, because you really have to interact with the people around you constantly.
Yeah, I call it LA rush hour, that phase, because that is what it is. It's just accidental car crashes all over the place, resulting in 2 swords quickly and swiftly removing you from existence.
And it happened a lot, even for us. Like, we were playing not as good as we did the rest of Prague on day 1, but we were still playing pretty clean and tight. But it was just, it's such a hectic phase that you can only really learn by getting in there and running with the same group of 8 lots and lots of times to learn exactly where everyone's going to go at exactly what time and exactly where people are going to pass specifically. And if you have to pass to this tank, people are going to go this way to it. And there are so many nuances to that phase, and especially in terms of space management and movement, that it's just a matter of time being put into it.
Before we had locked in pass timings too. We had people passing at just sort of pseudo random times, and it wasn't until we started to have we isolated exactly where we wanted to do the Nissi passes, and then people would not move around until those moments, and that's when okay, now the traffic is more manageable. But before that, it was just a mess.
One big thing that I kind of skipped over with Living Liquid and Limit Cut is at this point in the fight, at times deaths are effectively completely unrecoverable in this fight for the first 6 or 7 minutes. If any one person is missing from a triple Protean, if any one person dies before their marker goes off during Limit Cut, and literally if anyone dies at all during Gavel, that's it.
So I never tested this, but I always wanted to. If you die, so say you drop a Nissi, right? And 2 people can't get their Nissi's like conditions met for Gavel anymore. If they wall it, they lose those buffs, but when they're raised, they get the buffs back. Do you succeed or fail Gavel?
I believe we tested that and failed it.
So you do need 8 alive, because the dead people don't have the buff. Okay, all right.
Basically, it sees that it's missing, and determines that you are not you have failed.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never tried that. I mean, there was a couple times we could have, but we just walled it anyway.
Yeah, it's I believe the term I saw used most commonly was exacting. The first, I'll say 5, because the last minute of Brute Cruise is kind of like a victory lap DPS check kind of thing going on there. But I can only imagine that there's some frustrations when you see one person die and you know that's it, it's over. It's also
I mean, if someone's carrying Nissi at that point in time, that's it. If someone's carrying the thunder, the water, it's punishing, and I think that's good.
And I was going to bring that up.
We could still have death, though. We could have death, like if 1 or 2 people died during Limit Cut, that's recoverable. And if somebody died during Living Liquid, but they had already taken a Protean, or it was otherwise outside of a Protean section where we could instantly raise them, we had plenty of pulls where we recovered deaths in the first 6 minutes. It just had to be, it was like high chance it was a wipe, but not 100%. We recovered a lot of pulls that would have been lost.
Yeah, it was windows. It was windows of safe to die. And a little bit of luck. Like with the Limit Cuts, if like, let's say 7 dies before 7's turn, whoever the person who gets it, your fingers crossed that it doesn't lead to everything falling apart. But you're pretty much saying at that point, all right, just look at a wall, everyone. 8, look at everyone else. Figure it out. I don't know. What else?
I was going to bring it up later. But in your video, I remembered that there was, in your clear video, I remembered that there was a death pretty late in Perfect, I think. And I was going to say,
I'm not happy about that one.
Yeah. and overall, like in terms of just, prog and time invested in polls, would you say it's pretty punishing? Like, just go ahead and reset at a later phase if you die. If it's Sindolf, like you obviously kept it going with Sindolf dead, but
so it depends on what you're going for. Like you're aiming to achieve in that poll. If you're progressing and you're trying to familiarize yourself with a phase, and someone dies, you can still get experience in that phase for the other 7 people, or you get that 8th person back up and you still run through the phase, even if you'll fail it at the end. Because for things like Wormhole, even if you're going in with 3 weaknesses, it doesn't matter. You can practice, right? You're not, if you're trying to always push into Perfect Alexander and you're having deaths in Wormhole, you may as well just wall it straight away. But there are times when, yes, absolutely, you wall it. Like if we're on an Enrage and we see 3 DPS die at the start, you just wall it. Then in there, save yourself 5 minutes and pull again. But there, the call to wall it is more or less, can I achieve what I'm setting to get out of this pull?
Even in the last phase, prog, I would say, even if you're on Enrage pull, there was so much comfort to be gained every single pull with, things like Almighty Justice and Calibration Beta. So I would say just keep going, We could use the practice rather than spending time wiping in the earlier phases. Let's just do a little bit more, and even if we're on Enrage. But I don't think that ever happened. I'm pretty sure that We didn't have to make that call this time, but other groups, if they did. It just depends. If you don't have comfort, keep going. If you do, might as well wall it.
Okay.
Well, going back to the second phase where we left off, this is, as we mentioned earlier, a hyper punishing phase. It's very similar to the original A8 Savage in that, if you died during Gavel there, it was also just over. It didn't matter. So, I'd imagine with this, I guess I don't really know how I want to word it. In finding the comfort level with the person the people you're most likely to interact with, was there, outside of just getting used to people's movements, is there any way you would describe going about those movements in the first place? Like, there's still clearly a plan of people moving from this location to this location to this location without crossing paths unnecessarily. Is there any sort of advice you'd give a group looking to nail down okay, we can move safely and we can do this kind of movement every time kind of mentality?
Yeah. My biggest piece of advice I can give with that is slow down. Don't immediately run. Think about where you're going. Think about it again. It's like literally looking both ways before you cross the street. Because if you don't, you're going to hit people and you're going to die.
Telegraph
Stop.
your movement.
The person crossing the street, by the way, isn't the person who's gonna kill people. Just to be clear,
everyone dies. It's fine. Like, you're there. Everyone's gone.
It's like Final Destination 3, the highway scene.
Exactly. So, yeah, like Kio said as well, telegraph your movement so you can start hesitating towards that direction if you have a lot of space, and you can say, "I'm going this way. Can someone move around?" Or just make sure no one walks through here, obviously. But be very slow and decisive with your movements. Seeing people jitter around and just make little movements hastily and quickly is just spelling disaster.
I think the most challenging aspect of that was actually the pass to our mine-taking tank. So Brian specifically was handling mines every pull. That's regardless of if you got the ice. So if you got the ice, it was hectic, because he'd have to go drop the ice and then sprint over and take the mines. And then there was a Nissi pass right after he took the first mine, and it was like, how do we do this? So I think they got very good at practicing that specific movement. So we knew where Phantom would walk over to pass the Nissi, and they had a specific lane they traveled in. We knew it was going to happen every pull, that same movement. And it just made it so there was no variance. He never went in between me and the wall, and Brian. It was always, he would go around. We did the same exact iterations with each other while we were doing it every pull. So keeping that consistent made it, I would wait. So one of the things, like Raimi would get to the wall to bait the AoEs. I would never go around the outside of him, ever. If he was late getting there, I would just wait. I would sit there and I would wait for him to pass every time before I'd go to the wall, even if neither of us had Nissi, just so that was always consistent. And so your movements were related to other people. And once we got that down, I think it really helped a lot.
And if you don't say anything, don't change anything that you're doing. Communicate any, especially movement changes and positioning changes. But if you're not actively changing anything, do exactly the same thing you just did.
Now, I think that... I'm sorry. No, you.
Oh, we also just agreed early on that DPS would move by default. It's like, tanks and healers, don't move. DPS will come to you. And that helped a lot too, obviously. You don't have people trying to run through each other trying to pass. Unless if we made an exception, if I said, "Oh wait, I'm going to come to you this time because it's better based on the traffic."
That's usually like if a DPS has the Nissi instead, so reducing the Nissi moving traffic. Yeah, that's when I ran into that a lot.
Or to run to Sfia because he's chain casting, and it's an easier movement for me. So I would just say, "Oh, I'll come to you," kind of thing.
One thing that Sfia, I believe, touched upon is getting used to. I guess you both touched upon it. The need to understand everyone's movement. Now, that's not an entirely foreign thing in terms of Ultimate and more recent Savage content, but it's a lot more punishing this time around. Do you foresee that this being a problem if anyone ever needs to, say somebody can't make it that night, and you need to fill in an 8th person? does that suddenly just destroy that? It just might as well just accept that the first hour or first hour and a half of that night is probably gone to fixing Gavel with the new person.
Pugging this fight is going to be an absolute nightmare for that exact reason. If you're going into PF, if you're going into PF with 8 different people every time you want to try this, it's just going to be unbelievably difficult unless you can get familiar people, or, and this is a really important one, or unless the strat is devised which has very set movements for every single person in every iteration. Nobody's done that yet, and it'll probably take some time for that to come out, but it could be a thing that happens where you have very, very set and routine movements, and then it's not a problem anymore.
We talked about doing, like, walking along the ring on the outside, like having lanes, basically, where people would travel. At some point, Phantom decided that the outside ring was his lane. He'd just run around the outside. And we could set that for every group member, but we never did it. We just learned each other's movements. So maybe a pug-friendly strat would be to utilize the lanes.
I think the pug-friendly strat is only bring 1 melee as well.
And I was going to get to that. I was going to get to that too,
Yeah. Same. Let's go ahead and knock that out. So you don't really have a conventional, like, group.
I disagree.
I was gonna say, I think convention. I think the way people view convention nowadays is kind of skewed because you only need one of every type of DPS, and need is a strong word. You just, if you want the full bonus, you need 3 unique roles. That 4th role's just whatever you want. It doesn't need to be a second melee. It's been that way since they changed it.
Something that a lot of people don't do is every expansion, you throw everything you knew away, and you reset and you reevaluate what the meta is, right? And you have to just completely sort of just disregard what you think and things that you may have thought before and how it applies to now, because it doesn't. You just reset, and then you take all the new knowledge you have, and then you make opinions and make choices based on those. So what we learn from this expansion is that one of each is pretty much a necessity. Right, in Prog, you want one of each. So that's a melee, a physical ranged, and a caster. And then the 4th one is the whatever. Right, it's the whatever else you want to bring, which is the best for your comp or the best for your team. And then you go with that. So I think by Shadowbringer's definition, it's conventional. It's just not conventional by the definition of people who haven't really put that term into this expansion.
Anything, Kio?
No, not much.
You're just like, I'm a healer. I don't have to worry about all that. It
was convenient. Well, so we had the struggle of who's going to play physical ranged for a while, but when Phantom settled on it, it was just convenient that the people's most comfortable jobs fit into a nice composition of, 1 melee, 1 physical, 1 caster. And we had already been convinced pre-prog of the strength of Summoner Black Mage combo, so we were happy. We didn't feel the need to take people off their comfort roles to make some kind of pseudo-optimal comp. And it turned out, we didn't know ahead of time, but especially the Nissi phase really favored having only 1 melee in terms of consistency. So, bonus.
Big bonus.
There's a lot of things other than just space on the floor that favors 3 ranged as well. There's things like boss positioning. You don't have to worry so much about positionals and uptime, because Ninja is pseudo-ranged when it wants to be now with GCD-based Mudras, and the other 3 DPS aren't having to worry about going up there and hitting the boss physically. You can get yourself a lot more uptime and create strats that may not be as efficient, but you can still get very high damage through them. So it meant that when it came down to actually beating enrages, we didn't have to change anything because just the comp that we brought did that by itself.
Yeah. I do also want to say that some of the old arguments from previous metas for double melee actually had a lot more to do with the strength bonus that used to exist. So tanks would actually lose a substantial amount of damage if you didn't take a monk, a samurai, or a dragoon, because you would lose the strength. The ninja didn't provide it, the strength buff. So for a while there, ninja was overpowered. Everybody wanted one. It had this guaranteed raid spot, but you couldn't run 3 melee plus ninja because your tanks would suffer. So you sort of were shoehorned into this double melee comp for the sake of damage. And when the roles were switched such that the ninja does now provide the raid buff that you would need from a melee slot, it actually opened up more possibilities for triple ranged without the drawbacks.
People also bring up that Dragoon giving physical range the buff for all those years also kind of fit in. You kind of wanted Dragoon for strength and that, and then you wanted a ninja for trick attack and everything else it did.
One other thing as well that I think made our comp really good, outside of the obvious double addle just being better than Feint, is 3 of our DPS have personal on-demand shields. Ninja has Shade Shift, Black Mage has Mana Ward, and Summoner has Titan Iggy Shield.
Chat was asking, why is there a chicken nugget out in some of those pictures? Yep. I remember seeing it in the limit cut transition, which makes sense for the J kick, and I mean, I guess it makes sense in a lot of cases. Yeah. There's a lot of times where there's no reason to have an Ifrit or Garuda out, I suppose.
And then you have Dark Knight that can TB in the Bard. So it meant that while your healers got comfortable with things like phase transitions or high amounts of damage in situations you weren't comfortable with yet, you had that extra safety net on everyone. Like, we had a scripted Mana Ward and Titan Iggy Shield and Shade Shift in several points throughout progression that could be then taken away, obviously, as the healers got more comfortable and learned their timings. But it just made the transition into a new phase just so much smoother and really evened out the learning process.
Yeah, unsung hero are the shields, and especially Sindolf's usage of TBN as a raid utility was fantastic. That's one of the things I used to criticize Dark Knights for in previous tiers, was whether you could clutch TBN someone during a mechanic, and Sindolf is amazing at it. He's very, very good at TBNing when it's needed.
Well, you know, I may not have a shield on to answer, but at least I bring a free and Dom once a minute. Okay?
True. Curing Waltz is very strong.
Yeah, I think I've healed like 23,000, 24,000 with it occasionally.
We actually went in blind with a dancer instead of a bard, and then we saw the fight and we thought, nope. It was about 30 minutes and we rezoned, took in the bard, and we just never changed it back. Just because the fight, especially the first half, is so bard favored that we didn't want to mess with the consistency after that point, so we just thought, run with it.
Double dot padding, Wanderer's Pain, I'd imagine, was a big helping point with Living Liquid.
It helps a bit. Yeah, I mean, it took one extra Asuna away, which was all right. But it mostly, we actually had the conversation at one point later on after we had Living Liquid and Cruise Chaser Brood on farm, and we were mostly progressing through Prime. We had the conversation with Phantom briefly about, should we switch back to Dancer? Because the damage that matters now is the damage on Prime and later. And that's all single target. But we decided, no, let's not mess with it. I mean, we could have changed it, and I think it would have helped. But it was one person relearning the fight on a different job. And we might weaken our earlier phases, which we wanted to be consistent, so we just left it.
Makes sense. I was gonna go Bard this tier, but Dancer looked fine on FFXIV, so I was like, all right. That was it. I was like, I'm gonna make you respect Curing Waltz. I will make you respect it, and I still will. I'm working on it more and more every poll. Okay, so we've gotten through discussing a bit of Phase 2. We've gotten into some of the later aspects, but I guess we might as well go into Alex Prime at this point, because I don't think there's much more we can say about Gavel and like the lineup, I suppose, and the super jump. There's not really a whole lot to, I guess, say about that. Other than, were there any things that weren't from Brute and Cruise that weren't there that you were surprised? Same question as Living Liquid. I can think of one for me, but I'm curious if you expected to see anything during Brute Cruise that you didn't.
Laser swords, left and right.
Oh yeah, definitely. We were like, please watch for laser swords. Focus target Cruise Chaser during that phase. It never happened.
Just one spin crusher.
Something was different, actually, and we didn't actually learn this till later on, after it already cleared the fight, or after it already cleared the phase. Sorry, but even in that phase, with Brute and Cruise, Brute Justice's flamethrower, or his flare thrower, it's called, targets the closest player. So we had a couple of wipes where we had no idea what was going on, but it was because Shin moved a little too close to the boss, and it turned around and just killed everyone. Yep.
I remember
Should've
that.
picked up on that one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one of those mechanics that's trying to teach you something for later, but you don't really pick up on it. right away.
Yeah, it was snuck in there, and it didn't feel like it didn't make sense when it happened. Like it should have always been on the tank, but when it wasn't, you just figured, oh, someone messed up. But nope, it was a thing.
It was certainly a thing. Height error, probably my biggest surprise to not see that in there.
I don't know. I don't really think height error would have added too much outside of it would have to be scripted in the way that every mechanic in that fight plays out. You'd have to have a certain height paired with a certain Nissi at a certain time. Because
With numbers.
well, no, it's more like that fight already plays out in a very specific way, right? So all that adding height to it would do is move where you did that specific movement at, and it would be centered around the height. So it wouldn't really change that much. It would be kind of arbitrary in the way that it would function, or they'd have to rewrite the whole phase itself to suit height rather than everything else that was going on.
Yeah, I just always think of height as the like, it's like a mechanic that requires so little brain energy but expends a lot, because the whole time that you're waiting for it to resolve, you're like, okay, all right, good, all right.
Yeah.
I think we were a little surprised Super Jump operated the way it did too. The brute didn't turn around and face me. I was the brute jump. I was the Super Jump baiter. And at one time I spooked Sfia with it. He was like, "It's not baited," because he just hunched over and faced the party, but then he just turned around and jumped away. So.
I felt the same thing actually. I was like, uh-oh, because I ran out as soon as I saw it, and I'm like, okay, all right.
I was amazed at all the pulls we did. I never once killed the party with that, but I thought it was gonna happen at some. I started getting so greedy with. I would stay there doing my Art of Wars on both targets. I waited till the cast part's like a quarter of the way done, and then I would sprint away to the other side of the arena. I was like, this isn't gonna jump far enough.
He's pretty reliable at getting all the way to where you want him to be. He's very reactive.
He waddles back across the room with his stumpy little legs. Yeah, I love that every single time. I just watch him walk like he's shit himself. It's great.
The goblins inside all shit themselves. We'll do that.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, I was kind of surprised by this point that, they said they used their own words. They used everything. And there's a lot of things that weren't in here by the time we get through the second phase. I was really disappointed to not see any all thoughts. I, of course, love my boy Twinkle Dink and Lame Bricks. I like those two. I want those three to come back at some point. I miss those three. Well, Lame Bricks is still in PvP, but no one cares. Sorry. Sorry, Lame Bricks. No one cares. But then you get through that, you go through the DPS check, and you come to Alexander Prime. And this phase is kind of divisive, because in some ways it's like a really easy phase, and then when it kicks up, it's also like the most brutal shit that will wall people longer than almost anything else as has now been made apparent to me. First transition comes out. How important was getting that first transition down and identifying things for the rest of the fight? Because it teaches you a lot very quickly about everything you'll need to know for the rest of the intermissions, I suppose.
Let Kio take this one away because he came up with a beautiful strat for it.
Sure. So I will start off by saying I think in hindsight, we thought this was probably one of the most disappointing phases in terms of they could have done so much with stasis, and ultimately this just ended up being an intro, which isn't a bad thing. I like intros, but yeah, it was one of those things where our first pull to it was just shocking. Like, what is going on? Why are these debuffs? And then we just all die, and it was.
Oh no, actually, correct you there. We don't all die. We live, we necro through to Inception formation, and then Kio accidentally runs into the wall, and we win.
Yes, that's true. I didn't know that was the first.
Way to just throw him under the bus, man.
Oh God, I walled it.
Yeah, it's a great clip. Provide it to anyone who wants to see it.
Embarrassing as fuck. But yeah, it was pretty quick that we sorted out the proximity, causing the different directions, turning of the bosses, and I don't know. I ironed out that strat. I guess it was me. I ironed out that strat pretty quickly. Yeah. Just like, there's 2 cleaves here. There's 3 cleaves here. It's all proximity. We can just spread the long tether this way. I don't know. We sorted out a very clean looking strat. I don't The ones I saw on streams, I didn't see anyone doing our strat.
No,
But
definitely not.
But
Yours is the one where the near tether goes through both sides of Cruise Chaser, right?
So the
Yeah.
unmarked people, it's always a DPS and a healer, if I remember right. The unmarked people are north and south of Cruise. The 2 people with the close tether are north and south of Brute Justice.
Right, flamethrower.
And the person with the long tether, that's not a DPS, goes to the base of the third Cruise cleave on either whatever the east or west side. I don't remember the same side the Cruise is on. And then everybody else goes through the opposite side the Cruise is on, through the Brute Justice, and sits at the corner. That's all the aggravated assaults and the long tether. That's a DPS.
Yeah, versus the stream strat, which is to like stick the two get the fuck away from everything's like north of Brute, and just to make sure nothing ever aims their way.
Yeah, we saw some streams and there were people like on the walls. There were people at very specific spots, just a little bit away from things, but not too far away. And it seems so precise. Kio's strat is very elegant and simple. So if anyone ever wants to prog that fight, use it. It's great.
Yeah, all our
Free
other
pasta.
strats are shit. Use that one.
Big fan of strats that don't involve you having to get across the room in a small amount of time. So anything that's close to the bosses is nice. Or you can have a centralized location and get there quickly.
Trust me, I'll have words about that, like positive ones, when we get to Wormhole. Because I'm very familiar with the way you guys do Wormhole. very, very, very familiar with it at this point. So yeah, you get through that transition. Now, I want to say, were you... Was it surprising to see that it was almost like just Bahamut with 3 trios instead of like any more than that, kind of with the Alexander phase? Because it's basically, I'm here, I'm gonna do 2 tank busters, leave, 2 tank busters, leave, and then do a trio, pretty much.
When you see that, you have to assume that it means there's more later, right? Because
Right.
they're always going to add at least like the expected of what's in an ultimate. You know, they can't leave it so empty that the end of the fight is literally 2 trios and then you burn them down and that's it. It just means that they put more sort of mechanic budget at the end of the fight, not in the middle. And that's fine.
When we were doing easy mode Inception, I just thought it was like a big break time. You know, basically as soon as you clear Cruise and a Brute, you're just chilling. Stasis was easy. And then Inception hits and it's easy. You're just kind of sitting there in your spot, just kind of chill. And that was it. I was like, man, we could just take a break here. And yeah, that changed later.
A little bit.
But
Little
it was
bit.
it was a little weird. It did feel like it was a little too simple, and I guess it was. But that didn't really help anyway. It's just an observation in hindsight.
Well, you've brought us to probably the most, I will say the most anticipated part of the discussion, in that of Inception formation. Now, aptly named in more than one way, I suppose, because a total mindfuck, which is, you'd think after Ooh would not happen, but it did. Everyone's progging that phase. They're killing the heart, making sure it doesn't reach Alexander because he's going to one-shot people. I'll just drop the Inception crystals along the outside. They'll tell us where Alex... Like, it's perfectly designed to be done in this way. Every element of it makes perfect sense. And it's wrong.
Yes. It baits you into thinking that you know too much. That, I did all this prep, I know how A12 works, I know how A11 works. This heart, I know how that works too. But not for now. You knew it before, but not now.
So this is where you had to unlearn stuff, pretty much.
Yes.
Learn
Yes, you had to
things,
do
yeah.
things unintuitively to what you'd known for like 3 years now.
Mm.
Nobody figured, we didn't figure that out until we had a reason to go back and re-examine. Like, we were the same as everybody else. We put the towers at the corners. We lined up 3 orbs in the middle, 4 actually, and then we would DPS down the heart and go on about the rest of the fight, just like everybody else. And it was...
And you'd think smugly to yourself, we're so good. Look how quickly we solved this mechanic. It's so easy. What a strat. We're great. No.
Now, before we move on to the next formation, I don't want to treat this like Prague and just be like, all right, we're done. Let's go to talk about Wormhole. There was a deep-seated secret tucked away here. I believe Final Fantasy XIV's own tweet says the mystery of the true heart. In that this was a Woken mechanic that slipped by a lot of people's attention for 5 days, apparently, before Moof publicly streamed it for the first time. What was the process of elimination for getting to this for you to go, we need to figure out that thing we think it's that thing?
Right.
Because you guys have mentioned getting lucky in figuring this one out a few times.
So we have, Sindelf has written up what is called the Enigma Codex.txt. It's literally a text file which tells our thought process on how we got the Enigma Codex buff during Prague. And it's a wacky ride, but you kind of want to tell it when we get to Perfect Alexander, I think, because that'll give some context as to what we were doing and why we were doing it.
Okay, so you want to wait to talk about this until we've gotten to Fate Calibration, essentially.
Yeah, let's find the rope to get over the wall when we get to the wall.
Okay, yeah, because I've got some things to say about this. I know Kio liked my tweet about Inception formation, so I can't wait to come back to that. So you get through Inception, you kill the heart. You do have to do what is a very traditional A12 means of doing Inception. He picks a crystal location. You drop them at locations that will reveal him. Shoots a sacrament through. There's a shared sentence, separation tethers, 2 fuck off tethers. And then Cruise Chaser comes back, does some limit cuts while Brute Justice does a super jump. All stuff at this point that's been defined and you've seen. If you've done A12, it's quick to go, all right, I know exactly how this works. So do we need to discuss, was there any mystery there when you got to it?
Only thing to discuss is that we did it differently than literally everybody else. That's probably the one thing that's the most stark for me is how differently we handled those tethers than other people. Because we wanted to minimize the amount of people hit by shared sentence, and we noticed very quickly that you could 2-stack it with the DPS that got it, this DPS in a tank, if you put a lot of shields on him. So that's what we did. We did DPS with shared and tank with far tether on one side, everybody else on the other, and surprisingly very easy to nobody mistaked which direction they had to go early on once we settled on that. And then that created this situation where the same person, which ended up being me, because the healers never got marked, bait the super jump every time. Whereas every other group has the tank taking the super jump with cooldowns, or a randomly associated or randomly assigned person take the super jump based on debuffs. So it was different every time. So it's simple enough, but it was one of those things where we had a slightly different strat that kind of surprised us. Nobody else was doing that.
It was, I think, the safest and the most consistent at the same time. I think it's just another one of those. Was it you? I think it was you, wasn't it, Kio, who made this? The call to just 2-stack it. Yeah, it's just another Kio, very pug-friendly strat. I approve. Yeah, take that one off.
All right, so you heard it here. Again, ignore what everyone else is doing. Just mitigate it.
It doesn't even require that much. I think it's raw. With 2-stack, it's raw something like 100,000 damage, and DPS have 90,000 HP, so you don't need that much shielding.
Yeah,
we just threw a TBS.
I think it's 120.
Yeah, because when I eat it with a 3-stack with just a non-crit sucker, I usually fall down to 30,000, 40,000.
Yeah, about 80k from that. So
yeah.
Initially,
it's about a 40k stack.
Initially, we were hyper over mitigating it. We'd give them more than their HP bar worth of shields. I'd force the crit low.
I want to see a screenshot of
TBN,
that.
The Benison. We definitely have the screenshots.
And then we had 3 DPS with personal shields as well. So it was just, you became a fortress for a little bit and you felt invincible. But you couldn't get touched by anything because you had a vuln, but you felt invincible.
Yeah. You were like Boris invincible, where you say it, but seconds later it's not true.
But I just kept doing that anyway until we had to change Inception, and then I started crit deploying the Inception for the damage. And then we had a smaller shield on the DPS, but it didn't matter. We'll come back to that later.
Yeah, we will, I suppose, because we just did Inception, super easy mechanic. Don't know what could possibly be difficult about that. We will never need to talk about it again. Clearly, just kill the heart, move on, we're done. Then we get to wormhole formation, and that break that you had during the clearly 100% intended way of doing Inception, that got turned on its head pretty quick, I imagine. Because wormhole, obviously seeing it done and then doing it, very different than figuring out how to do it. And that's what I want to hear about. Because that shit's nuts.
Yeah. Figuring out wormhole was a process. Pretty much for every group that was progging this block, it was just a strategic nightmare in a way of organizing who'd go where. We went through so many iterations of strategies. I have 3 different macros, chat macros, for the different strategies that we had done, because we flipped. At one point, someone said, "I hope you still have that old macro," and I had overwritten it, and I was like, "Oh, I should start saving these." So then there ended up being 3 major iterations where we did several pulls on a strat, and then changed it later, and it was just like, it was a map like, do you have the two people being slashed and dashed on the same side? That creates problems with void orders because you really want the people in the same slash and dash section to be taking puddles at a time. So you really wanted to slash across the room, but that was scary because, positioning, there's this ray going around. Do we put that in the puddle? Do we put that not? There's so many options for strategy there. So it was just this crazy process of figuring something out that worked. And we had Cleese on it. We had everybody racking their brains, everybody throwing suggestions. Feel like every pull was a different strat for a stretch of like a couple hours. Crazy.
I remember how we first approached it, the mechanic, was we saw it once, we saw how the first little bit kind of played out, and we made some like known rules, right? We knew that essentially 5 and 6 had to take the first puddle, and then we could extrapolate from the timing of what we saw was happening to the second puddle, that 7 and 8 would have to take the second puddle, and then 1 and 2 would have to take the third puddle if it came. So we could set those rules just based on the timings that we saw. We also knew that Brute Justice was baited far, so we had to do something with that. And based on just who had to soak the puddles, we could set those rules and then let people try and make a strat around meeting those conditions. Which I think helped us a little bit, because it seems like people were a lot slower getting to a consistent wormhole strat than we were. But yeah. it took until it was Ara deciding that we could have very fixed positions for everyone else, the 1, 2, 3, 4. As soon as he found that out, the strat really came together for everything except for ironing out the nuance of the individual movement.
Yeah, and do I hate getting 3. I have gotten 3 70% of the time.
We started to think it was role-based because it was the same with us. We were getting like repeats where somebody would get the same 1 or 2 marks, like 6 pulls in a row. And we were like, this has to be a role thing, right? Next pull, you get 7. It's like, what? Oh.
Then pull after that, you get 6. Pull after that, you get 4. And you're like, fuck it. I don't ever want to be 3. It makes me mad. I like being responsible. 3 isn't responsible for... I mean, it is, but like... Come on.
Feel helpless while you watch your team get slash and dash to death?
3, the way I wrote out 3 to describe it to somebody is 3. Go to Brute Justice, look at wall, turn camera, watch everything burn.
Yeah, more or less.
That's how I describe 3. I'm just like, no, please. Knowing you can do nothing.
But at a certain point, we were having issues with the slash and dashes being... every person would put it in a slightly different place. So you had 5, 6, 7, and 8. Their Alpha Sword and Blasty charges would be slightly different, slightly angled different spots. And at some point we had to have discussion. Okay, we need these to be predictable. So they have to be in very specific spots. And we made a safe place at the East-West Cardinal where the chakrams spawn. Like once the chakrams go, this is a safe spot. And once we did that, and we incorporated Ara's positioning strats, and we changed it. We were actually originally baiting the chakrams on the wall by Brute Justice, like everybody else was. And much to my hatred, because I was very against this change, we started baiting them in the middle. I think that was part of Ara's strategy, was start in the middle. And that actually ended up being really, really great for the Brute Justice super jump consistency. Because getting from Brute Justice to across the room before the jump snapshot was inconsistent at best, and really destructive at worst. It would just wipe us immediately when the apoc rays would be a few inches out from every other pull, or a few inches back, or turned a little bit, or suddenly he's in the puddle. It's like, a lot of little things that once we made those changes really made the plays consistent. When the super jumps are always going right to the wall every time, and number 3 stays at the wall, so it's always turn around and baited the exact same way, and the slashes are always happening at this very specific spot for 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and the safe spot, it was really smoothed out.
So with that, is this another case of don't do the streamer strat? Which, if you had to put them objectively against each other, against the wall, run to the other side, I don't even really know what the exact system is for, like, what is considered traditional at this point. I just see it and I'm just like, I don't know what you're doing. I'm just going to do the other and do this instead.
So comparing them, I feel like our one is really, really consistent, but the learning curve to get to that consistency is very steep. There's a lot of information. You have to learn very specific movements in every single role. And that's tough. Like, having 8, essentially 16 permutations of what you have to do in a single mechanic is infinitely harder than any other mechanic in the game ever. Right? Every other mechanic gives you 2, maximum 3 permutations of what you have to do at a decision tree. This gives you 16. So from that, you just know straight away that the learning curve is going to be immense. So you're going to be spending a lot of time here. But being consistent at it once you've got that is really important as well. I'm not sure if there are strats which are easier to learn, but potentially more, I guess, loose in their movement. But I'm always going to, vouch for consistency. So I think our strat is good, but I don't know enough about other ones to suggest.
I'm not actually 100% familiar with that one, so with the streamer.
So what would the Kio Pud strat be for this?
What's the macro, Kio?
Yeah.
You've seen the macro.
I
That
have
was
seen
leaked.
It's actually kind of funny. We posted our intermission video where, he absorbs the robots and gets big. But we didn't think about the fact that in that macro, there was lines 3 through 8 of what happens in Wormhole. And so we had multiple teams messaging us without our knowing, saying, "Oh yeah, thanks for the Wormhole macro. We've finally got it consistent." Which they kind of had to, reverse engineer it and then figure out and move some things around. But that was a bit of an accident.
That was also an old version of the macro. We made some revisions that better said what to do. They more highlighted the things that were more important than. I think one of them's like, don't be near the wall was in those macros, and that's not right. That was an old iteration of the macro back when we were baiting at Brute Justice.
Yeah, I was going to say that's for 4, isn't it?
Words. That was when 4 couldn't necessarily make it, so we had that thing say, don't be by the wall at first. But that was irrelevant with the new strat, so I deleted that eventually. But in the transition video, it was still there. So.
Yeah, if you tuned into my stream at any point, I'm sure it looked a little familiar. They're just like, all right, what are we doing? 3, 4, 5. Thank you.
It's a good strat. It's just there is a steep learning curve, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the same across every Wormhole strat because fundamentally the rules are the same. There are 8 different spots that you'll have to learn and then flip it, so 16. But it's a very daunting mechanic when you look at it at first. It's just the amount of just space management and moving parts that happen during it and timing nuances and positioning nuances. It's so deep and rich as a mechanic that I absolutely love it, but my God, it's hard.
This is a great opportunity to talk about a preparation step we made that really paid off in Wormhole. One of the things we did before Prague, and this is the first time we've ever done this, I mentioned this in the Frosty show, is we made sure that every single member of our raid group, all 8 people, could record footage and post screenshots of their pulls. It was very, very important that we could share POVs with everybody. So when it came to Wormhole, we actually made a compilation list. When someone would execute a number correctly, we would post a GIF, animated GIF of that execution, and add it to a list. Cleese compiled the list for us. So if you needed to look up something like, man, I got 7 so wrong. Let me go look at how, Sfia did 7 when he got it. And you go look in the list, and there was a GIF of number 7, and you could watch it and fix your movement. And through that, we were able to like target the ones we were worried about. Like I was really worried about 5 and 6. It was my weakest numbers. If I got 5 and 6, I was really nervous. But I watched a couple other people doing 5 and 6, and I learned some tricks like where to pre-position, and it really ironed it out for me. And I didn't really make the mistake very much after that. And that's really important, I think, because there's a lot of different options, so you just have to study them all. So,
what do you think?
It's much.
Oh, sorry.
It's much better to look at a POV than look at a diagram.
Do you think there's any possibility out there that somebody finds a way that those 8 people go to one spot and don't move the entire time?
No, impossible, because of the puddles. Puddles necessitate a crossover. That's what Phantom tried to do. Phantom's big idea was, let's move to the out edges and we don't have to move again. And I was like, no, you have to cross over at some point because of the puddles. So we have to have a strat that accommodates the crossovers.
I'm curious because I've thought things were impossible. I'm really looking forward to the weeks and months that go on to see if anyone finds like a way where you can like get someone at like max with the puddles like size at max distance and then a little bit in and a little bit in. They all like look like slightly differently to bait them away, and the people on the other side are like slightly off. I'm just super curious to see because some people brain like galaxy brain shit like I think the fact that you guys got this the way you did is galaxy brain, and I think people still have some more galaxy brain to fucking figure it out for. I don't know. I
think the rules of limit cut that we set at the start are universal. That 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2 take the soaks, right? I don't think there's really another way around it except for maybe you can't swap 3 and 4 with 1 and 2. So no, that's more or less how it has to be. And I can't, and I've never come across another way to do it. And to do that, you have to go across. That's just the nature of the mechanic.
I hope it stays that way. I hope nobody galaxy brains it because I think this wormhole strat's actually great. Having seen 3 through 8 and doing it for unsuccessfully for several days. Let's not talk about that. Anyway, so, yeah.
That's the learning curve, like we were talking about, and having those POVs would absolutely help your team, as it would help any other team. It's just a matter of learning every single spot, knowing how to execute.
I'm just tired of getting 3, man. I don't want 3 anymore. I want to be responsible for something. I don't want to watch it all burn. Oh man.
Could have been done without the POVs.
Yeah, for sure.
Like prog-wise, could it be done without POVs?
You mean like world first, or just getting through?
Well, yeah, anyone just doing it.
Yeah, I think the POVs are great help, but you absolutely don't need them. Just keep pulling.
From a world first perspective, if you were really going for a world first, do you think it's a make or break?
Being able to share footage, I think it's a huge asset, but no, it's not mandatory. Okay. But I mean, you want every advantage you can get when it comes to world first. So I would say everyone recording footage is a no-brainer.
Speaking of big brain, when is the all 8 TPS member wormhole perspective video, like Brady Bunch style, whole time? And in the center it just says
we have all the
radiance.
footage for that.
We might.
Probably do.
That'd be pretty cool. You could just show them all individually, 1 through 8, and then all how it looks all at the same time. Or even just like 1 and then 2 and then 3 to 4. Yeah. I think it'd look pretty cool, to be honest. I think that actually be not only a massive asset, because if it was an asset to you during Prague, it's obviously going to be an asset to anyone else looking to specifically replicate that wormhole strategy. So,
you could even Brady Bunch just one person. Like you could have one person, all 8 numbers. You take your own footage and you assemble it.
That's a lot of fucking footage.
You're then depending on...
Unless you're me and you get 3 every fucking time. Sorry.
Well, even if you get 3, you're then depending on, for this footage, Brute Justice and Cruise Chaser to spawn on the same sides and the Void to spawn on the same formation every single time as well, to make the footage accurate for each POV.
That's why I think having 8 different ones of the same poll doing it correctly is like...
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the easier way to do it. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see the TPS wormhole Brady Bunch compilation. That's what I'm waiting on. You could do the song too with all your characters right at the front, the beginning. It'd be perfect. Here's the story of a shitty mechanic that everyone dies to on every pull.
Isn't it just the best though? When you successfully solve wormholes, so we're completely done. We've passed the mechanic. Everyone's alive. It's great. Y'all run to the center and die to incinerating heat. That's the end of the poll. Start off.
Yeah, they just threw in a split damage AoE and 2 enumerations, which I'm gonna say I was pretty surprised enumerations were 100% the same both times they appear. There's no randomness at all to enumeration, I guess because of everything else they were asking you to do.
The randomness that they do is the DPS targets.
Yeah.
Because it used to always be on healers in 6 and healer tank in 8, I want to say.
Yeah,
Intermission 2 is healer 8. Yeah. Anyway, that's the wrinkle they threw in there, that the variance goes elsewhere now. It's not the numbers, it's the targets.
But that's the end of Wormhole. Easy.
Yeah,
say this after every fucking phase.
Yeah, no, Wormhole is not easy.
You just always say, but you have to say it's easy. You can't let it beat you.
I will say this to the end of time. It is the hardest mechanic in the game by a very long margin.
It's like X's
Nothing else comes close.
On Bahamut. You just say it's easy, and then
X is
but it still
easy,
kills people.
But yeah, it's not easy for brains to do because it's a very high pressure moment. Wormhole's in the middle of the fight.
X's. Yeah. It's not easy for brains to do.
Yeah.
You
you have other stress factors going on at the time. But Wormhole, you're only 10 minutes into the pull at that time, which is it's not inconsiderable, but it's
not 18 minutes.
It's not 18 minutes exactly. Yeah, so that's why I think that just Wormhole is just there's nothing that comes close at all.
Well, once you get through Wormhole and you survive that, you got 2 Mega Holies. He swapped it up, no Tank Busters this time. And then you've got Shinryu 2.0. I guess is the best way to describe the end of... You like that? You like that, Kio?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's basically Shinryu in Rage Extreme, but with Alexander shit. It's 3 different targets, all casting.
Yeah, I guess.
Except damage.
Except real damage, and your
real
screen is just shaking the whole time.
Yeah, that scares the shit out of me every time when Alexander's in the back. I'm like...
Yeah, Alexander's going crazy, and the J-waves are shaking your screen at the same time, and you're sitting there thinking, is that me shaking, or is it the screen? I don't know.
Overlapping shake mechanics is... that's the first time, I think, ever. Overlapping shake mechanics from both targets.
Healers are, sweating and, squeaking while they're trying to get through this healing check as well. It's a very high-pressure moment. I've told Kio many times to get his blood pressure checked after this tier. Because of that particularly.
You told me that you told Kio to get his blood pressure checked, too.
Exactly.
Raimi and I would both say, Raimi was the one who brought it up. Just the stress during that phase. Even if it's not that hard to heal, it isn't really that hard to heal, but it's stressful. We're holding our breath in that.
When you first got there, did you find the DPS check a little bit forgiving, or was the heal check a little bit harder?
Well, the first time we got there was with nothing but 2 tanks alive, so we found the staying alive part really difficult. Yeah.
Well, you had the 2 best jobs to do it, at least.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that was a very short pull, but I think early on, the damage was never the problem. It was actually it kind of all came together at the same time. I think. What do you think, Kio?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, initially, I think it was harder because our damage wasn't fully optimized. Everyone was panicking about the Cruise Chaser and Rage, Caspar, so we would throw everything on him, and that made it take longer to kill Brute Justice, which meant we got subsequent, more J-Waves than we should, and those really hurt. And we also overhealed at the beginning because J-Storm hits really hard, but then the waves are really weak after, so we would end up overblowing our cooldowns at the start. And they both sort of sorted themselves out together. We realized that the damage was backloaded, and so I would just heal up the storm with an Indom, and then we would chill with weaker AoE healing, and also the group got better at optimizing the 2 target damage so that we got fewer J waves, and they just sort of came together.
literally mathed out that you only need about 65,000 damage, DPS, on Cruise Chaser to kill him in time before his enrage. And that's it. And at that point, you're using mostly 60s and 90-second cooldowns, so you're bursting with your party at about 110, 120k. So you can use very little on that, on Cruise Chaser, so that your Brute Justice damage is still there, and you can get well ahead of those J-Waves.
Listen, dancers. I hit them both with a standard and attack. That's what I'm going to do there. All right? That's the plan.
We talked about getting off Cruise Chaser and letting the dots finish him off so much. It's good.
Oh, one thing from Prime, was there any mechanic that you kind of hoped was there or were expecting that wasn't?
Don't say communion puddles.
I was about to, actually.
That was good.
If communion was there, maybe some things would have happened. I don't know. But it wasn't, so we don't need to talk about it, I guess.
Communion puddles during wormhole?
No, thank you.
You want to add another layer to fucking
Jesus. I don't want any of that.
Yeah, easy, right?
Yeah, easy. Don't worry about it.
Easy.
Just don't touch them. Forehead.
What else did Alex Prime have that we could have seen?
Ads?
We didn't see any ads.
Gravitational anomaly?
No.
I don't
Yeah,
really
no
exactly.
gravitational anomaly, no ads, no. What's the prey markers that he had in the first phase on the DPS? I don't remember what those were called.
I don't remember what those are called either. Just minimal temporal
Time
stasis.
gates.
Like we got a stasis, but
Yeah,
time
no
gates.
time gates.
Time gate.
Yeah.
We thought there would be time gates.
Yeah, time gate was a theory that we had later on as well.
There's an unintended time gate in a sense, kind of, but so we haven't talked about that yet. Yeah.
So we got through Wormhole. Hooray. We got through the Brute Justice and Cruise Chaser and Alexander Burn, which was actually, okay, this was a really good implementation of making your damage through that phase relevant. Because the lower you got Alexander before the burn, the more time you had after you killed both Cruise Chaser and Brute Justice, right? It was all relevant. He had a 75-second cast bar. If your damage wasn't good, if you were necroing your way through like you could in Bahamut Prime, you just wouldn't make that check. Alexander would finish his channel and everyone dies. But now they made it so that you couldn't necro your way through. Just that extra level of punishment added on top of what was essentially UCOB's Bahamut Prime phase, but now harder, and with the hardest mechanic in the game in it.
That's fun.
Brilliant.
But easy.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. I say that unironically. It's just the right type of design that I want.
And this kind of comes to a point that I've been skipping over. Healing. Kio. We're running Scholar Astro. I want to know what you think of Astro in this fight, healing wise. If you have an opinion, I don't know if you have explored thought of it much.
I'm worried about Astro's MP, but I'd imagine as long as you could make it through Brute Justice phase, there's enough downtime in Cruise Chaser, in Temporal Stasis, and you can do the Lucid cheese, where you pop Lucid and you get the extension from the time freeze. So that's still a thing. So you'd be fine once you made it through there. The burn is a little concerning, but I mean, if you remember back from Midas, they said the same things. Yeah. And Astro could still do, in practice, like I ran Astro in a couple of alt groups during Midas when it was relevant, and Astro was fine. This is before Star, getting through the J-Wave burn. So Cure 3 will always be an easy mode. Don't have to think, just pop Cure 3. But Astro can do it. It just takes a little bit more planning, and that's not too bad.
Light speed, stars, the whole kit and caboodle.
I'm more worried about their MP than I am their ability to heal. We'll put it that way. And from what I've heard, it's not too bad.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious specifically because of Cure 3. Like everyone I talk to keeps saying, dude, Cure 3? Cure 3? I'm like, yeah, it's easy. Thin Air kind of ensures that after all these expansions. Okay, so we're through that. Bam. 1 minute transition into Perfect Alexander that you have to watch every time you get it. Really cool transition, but
it's a great transition because it gives you a chance to orient yourself to last phase. Like you really have to. Last phase is so different from the rest of the fight. that it's a good break time to like look over diagrams. We always used it as like a mental reset, look over diagrams, review the strategy, talk about strats, and it's plenty of time. So it was always really good.
Yeah, I guess that chat's bringing up the big thing. The fact that it's a cutscene obviously is what makes it really cool. But unlike I guess even the moments before Golden becomes targetable for Bahamut, you can't do anything. You're stuck. You're down for the count. You're gonna lose your Grease Lightning stack, start over, your Hootons, you can't shield before you come back. You can't do anything. You're essentially stuck till right the moment where the fight actually begins again before you can do anything. So I don't know if you feel a specific way about them doing this as a cutscene versus having this type of transition, but doing it more like even just brute justice, where he's,
Even if they added 3 seconds, or took 3 seconds off of the duration of that down for the count, that would make it so much more pleasant to transition out of that phase, or that cutscene. But other than that, I have no problem with it.
I think it's amazing. I'm so glad we got a full-length cutscene, basically, in the middle of an ultimate fight. Like, it was unexpected. I know we got it in UCOB, but Uwu's was largely just a recreation of the existing MSQ cutscenes. There wasn't really much additional added. So I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of this one, and it went above and beyond. It was magnificent. We loved the mecha assembly. It was
one of us in particular, huh?
Yeah, I've heard. Jesus Christ!
It was really something special. Like I'm floored that was added, and I'm glad it was the way. I feel like we didn't deserve it almost because of how small the community is that participates in Ultimate compared to the whole. But I'm really glad we caught it. It's something special.
Yeah, compared to Golden Bahamut or Supercharged Ultima, it's a very, very different approach to the way that they usually speak about Ultimates, even where it's a lot about trying to reuse assets and make like maybe model changes. But this is like, it's a brute justice reskin, but it's a very work intensive one, I'd have to imagine.
They put a lot of work into it. You can tell that much. Except for one thing, which we'll talk about soon. Speaking of the perfect Alexander model. Yeah.
Yeah. So you get the perfect Alexander, you get the first mechanic, final word. Well, you can figure that out. That's not too big an issue. It's just teaching you how something new works. You get ordained emotion, ordained stillness, really testing the attention span of people when they need to start or stop. Which we all know, as a dancer, again, who has to improv and everyone needs to stand still for a few seconds, I'm like, if any of you jump out of this, I hate you. And someone always does it. So I know people can't stand still or move around in the ways they're told to. But you've learned all that, and now all of a sudden there's this like 20-second cast bar, fake calibration alpha, and you're like, okay, this is Enrage? And then it happens, and you're like, we can't, what?
Yeah.
That's
First time we saw it, we saw 4 robots. Everyone said, "What's going on?" And then we all died. And that's all that we learned. That's it. That was the phase. We thought, oh, cool, we've made progression. We're going to see a new trio. We're going to learn a ton of mechanics. We're going to see what this phase is all about. And we just instantly die.
Stillness.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
That's probably the funniest part about watching people on stream prog it, is everyone just like randomly guessing whether it was going to be stillness or motion.
So, but think about it when you get there for the first time with no other like prior knowledge of what this phase is, right? You're going in and you're thinking, I need to learn as much as possible right now, be as observant as possible, look around the room, get all the information that is physically possible to absorb, and get it right now, and then you die immediately with no telegraph. You're just dead. It's the only sort of way that you can make sense of that is it's either guaranteed going to be a stillness or something in the first phase dictated what just happened, right? Because nothing else made sense then.
Absolutely. I think 1A said it best when they hit it the first time. And they stopped speaking Japanese and just said, "What?" So that was the perfect reaction. We had the same one.
Yeah. And the only way you kind of, as you just said, Sfia, really one of the only ways you start to recognize this is if you did uwu in the first day, when you got to the ads there where you're just like, it's over.
So it's worse than that, and I say it's worse because that was a wall, right? That was just an obvious wall. There was nothing you could do about the fact that you had to LB3 those bits around the edge, and then you had to heal LB3. That's all. That's what you had to do. There was nothing else you could do about it. You got here, and you could, through luck and nothing but chance, survive the mechanic, right? So it was a wall that was disguised as a mountain, and you can get over a mountain consistently, but you can't get over a wall without all the information you need. So we kept thinking, there's more that we can learn here. There's more that we can see, and we can figure this mechanic out because obviously something's working in here that we're doing. One of these is working. We're just missing the tell. But then it just never came.
Oh, it happened. It just happened in a very different way than everyone had, projected prior to Sunday-ish. I want to say Monday, maybe, when people figured it out.
There's a clip of forgive me for not being able to remember which group it was, but there is a clip of Fake Calibration Beta without the codex, where the group managed to luckily survive through Alpha, luckily survive through the Buster immediately afterward, and they made it to Beta, and then just death because they don't know what's going on, and it just goes to show like you can still progress through sheer luck and good guessing. With a couple of members and still make it, and it's just, that was so confusing. As Sfia was saying, it was almost misleading.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is you still got to see everything that was supposed to happen. Like you were still given all the information. Oh, there's a defamation. There's some people with the lightning. There's a shared sentence here. It's just, how do I put any of this together?
We had enough data points from pulling there to try and learn about this phase that we could map out every debuff that happened. We could map out that there would be a safe spot at the front, at the back, but it was at the middle of one of two robots. We could map out that it was going to be a defamation. We could map out the shared, the 3 plaintiff severity, whatever that debuff's called.
I call it the lightning debuff.
Yeah, I call it lightning as well.
Aggravated assault.
So we knew all of this stuff. We just didn't know who it went on, what dictated that, when it happened, and why. So we had a strat. We went into it with a strat that would work if we knew those conditions. But no matter where we looked, we couldn't find it. And we looked real far. We went down some rabbit holes, and they were not pleasant places.
Were they wormholes? Listen.
I was absolutely obsessed with the glow in particular.
Yeah, I can see that in my chat. GL Omega Lol W.
Yeah, I was one of the people that was firmly in the camp that boss's model changing appearance was dictating somehow the orientation of the debuffs in Alpha. So that somehow, if you look through the patterns of the boss turning into a glowing state and off of a glowing state, that you could interpret that somehow to tell you the buffs and where the safe spot was. And we ran through
I'm going to link a
so
tweet
many
just to
iterations.
highlight how glaring the difference is. Like literally glaring. It glares at you. It's so obviously different. And this was the biggest either red herring or bug that exists. And that was a very, very deep rabbit hole.
Kio. First tweet, GL Omega Lol W. There you go.
Yeah.
And this would... Oh, carry on. You know more about the glow than I do. You went far deeper than me.
I pulled out the ruler, and I tweeted that was tweeted as well by Sfia. I pulled out the ruler. We were watching where it started glowing and taking percentages of the cast bar and trying to correlate that to different parts of the mechanic. And he would also glow earlier in the phase too. So okay, is he glowing during final word? Okay, that means something too. And it was just, I had this long text document of just all these different iterations of, okay, when he glowed in this way and this way and this way, this happened. Okay, when he glowed this way and this way and this way, this happened. Theory 1, when he glows like this, it does this. When Theory 2, and it was just endless.
So
God, it was awful.
So some of our raid members are trying to poke one of your raid members after you cleared to get any information because we weren't even there yet, but we just wanted to know. And one of your members came back with saying, I don't want to say too much, but Morse code.
Yeah. So at one point in time, there was the idea floated that maybe he's trying to communicate to us in Morse code. At one point in time, Kio may have tried to convert the off and on, whether he's glowing, to binary. It was bad. We were in really deep.
But thankfully, at some point, we called it that evening, and we decided to sleep. Not before testing a few other things, but we thankfully did not continue down the rabbit hole any further because it was clear that we're at this wall, and we weren't going to clear it that evening. So we did need to sleep at some point Thursday night. So we went to bed. It was a good call to do that. Cleared our minds.
I think what's important is that I tell you the other things that we tested before we went to bed. But carry on first, Sly.
How in the blue hell did you quantify this?
It's ultimate.
That's the thing. It's unquantifiable. You have to get all the data points you possibly can and then make something fit to that. And would find things that would fit these statistical anomalies. Like, they would literally be statistical anomalies. That would be like, oh, this particular glow means that it's going to be stillness, deformation on tank, shared sentence on range DPS, 2 healers, and the other tank are going to have the planar severity. That's like, that was this one thing that may have happened twice, and you'd find things like that and be like, yes, this is the rule. We found out this one set. And it's obscene. Yeah.
Kio, how many timelines did you create? Because I know you probably had some timelines. How many timelines did you create?
Let's not over-exaggerate it. The biggest thing I was chasing down was that we found out on several different polls he started glowing during the Fate calibration cast bar at specific percentages. So we thought it was roughly either he was glowing at the beginning of the cast bar, at 25% through the cast bar, 50% through the cast bar, or 75% through the cast bar. And that this meant there were 4 possible configurations of mechanic and assignment in the phase following. And so that was what we were testing. So, okay, when he glows in the first 25%, does he do them in this very specific order every time? And all it takes is 2 data points to say, oh, that's bullshit. Nope. Literally 2 different polls where he glowed in that same percentage and did different things. And you go, okay, not true.
Yeah.
My greater concern is that these 11, 12-minute polls came down to that being the information point. I mean, there's not like you had anything else to work with at that point, but it's funny after the fact.
You gotta remember, what was the last hard wall we had like this where it was a cryptic mechanic? And it was octet. And how did you solve that? You pulled more. And you kept pulling and you kept pulling. You kept writing down all the data you could possibly get from every pull. And then you figured it out from that. But unfortunately, that's not how this one worked.
No, it doesn't. So remember when we figured out Inception earlier in the show? We just, you just kill the heart and you drop them crystals off to the side. I've got a story. I've got a story for you. So after you guys cleared, one of our raid members noticed that Shinoa meowed randomly in one of our pulls. And we didn't really know why, but we're like, how come Shinoa has not meowed on any of our last 10 pulls? But that one pull, Shinoa meowed. We found a clip after it was made public, what we were supposed to do during Inception, that we had fed the heart to one of the crystals. The heart had gotten more resistant, and that Shinoa had meowed. That was the key. We just didn't see it. All we knew is that Shinoa meowed in our text, in our chats, and we're like, why? And that's it. Because Shinoa is the secret ingredient here.
Yep.
So, yeah, you want to go through this?
Right. Before going back there, we looked elsewhere, right? So you think, what else could possibly influence this mechanic? And then you see on Brute Justice and Cruise Chaser during the burn phase, there's this buff on them. And it's called the Enigma Codex. And it says, gives the wearer the ability to manipulate time. And we thought, wow, if we can manipulate time, maybe we can do this mechanic. That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? And so we thought, how can we interact with these mobs? Because like Woken mechanics, it's all about what you can physically interact with either the terrain or the bosses, things that they give you control over, you then experiment with them and put them in different ways and do different things with them to get different results. And so that was sort of the next step of the plan, was let's find the place where you have the most interaction, which is Inception. And so we thought, what can we interact with? Let's make Brute Justice jump into a Judgment Crystal. Maybe that'll do something. Maybe that'll put the bleed on him that happens when you stand in a Judgment Crystal, and he'll die and we'll get the Enigma Codex. That'll be pretty cool. Didn't work. So we tried to do it with Cruise Chaser, where he spawns in the middle and slashes through people. We've got a Judgment Crystal there. And we planned to do that, and I messed up the orbs, and I killed everyone except the tanks. Because we were supposed to kill the heart before it got to the center. But I killed everyone, so we couldn't kill the heart, and it ran into the crystal. And not long after, we went to bed. Thinking, it's been a complete waste of time, we've learned absolutely nothing. And that's that.
But you had learned something.
We had learned something, though. I woke up in the morning thinking about the heart, and thinking that something wasn't right there with that interaction. Why does it blow up? And I looked at the footage, and it gave it a Von stack. Sorry, a Von down stack. And the interesting thing about that is that it's a stack, which means that it implies multiple. And why would it, like, obviously it's a pass-fail mechanic. Virtually everything in this fight is a pass-fail mechanic. There's no degrees of failure, it's just either you fail or you don't. And so you look further into the heart and you think, the obvious things with this is then that either we've failed it already, or we're looking in the right direction. So we spent 2 hours from the time that we started raid trying to get it to eat four crystals. And we had runs where we learned all the interactions of the crystals, exactly how close they can be to Alexandra, exactly how close they can be to each other, but we couldn't get it to eat 4, and then we finally did. And we solved it. And that's the sort of roundabout loop we had to take to get to an actual solution to a mechanic for something 4 minutes into the future.
That's the time gate.
Yeah. It's very convoluted.
And then... oh, yeah, what's that, Kio?
Oh, I remember we had debates when we first saw it whether there was any merit to the observation. There's one stack. That's nothing, it's probably not relevant. We had the back and forth a little bit whether we should investigate, but we settled on investigating it. So we almost didn't. We almost discarded it. I wouldn't say we almost discarded it. We considered discarding it. But we decided very quickly that we should at least test a couple more stacks, see if something happens. And then, okay, let's not discard this completely until we test all 4. Other groups reached that point at a certain point too. I know Arthur's went to bed the night before it was discussed with the plan, let's try getting 4 when we get it. And then it was done while he was sleeping. So.
And I guess really the only hint to this, other than obviously hitting that hard wall, is when you do reach the Alexander phase, I mean, like you said, you can see they have that buff. The Enigma Code. That's it. That's the only thing up to this point, or a potential failure of the mechanic the first time, which is like how we, without noticing, ran into that condition and just didn't think about it. And that's, I think you'd think Uwu taught us not to let that happen, and it didn't, because didn't even cross my mind until I woke up that fateful morning and I saw a golden heart float off to the distance.
They tricked us. They said there'll be no puzzles. This will be more like UCOB. And they lied.
So you're holding it very personally against them. They lied.
I was distraught, right? It was a really, from getting walled to finding the heart, it was a really tough time. We were thinking, we're so stupid, we're doing something so wrong, we're bashing our heads away against this dumbass stuff for so long, and we're just wasting our times. Yeah.
It was really depression hours. Like it was not feeling good. I felt the feeling like we were throwing, like Sindolf said it actually. He's like, why is my team throwing by doing this? Like, it was a similar feeling. But
it's so fucking funny because the whole week until it was public, I was memeing saying, "You guys know Alexander made Shinoa?" to defeat himself? How the fuck could I have even thought about that? And even like obviously then people started posting all the like individual lore tidbits of like Jenova finding like, noticing pieces of the codex and things like that, little crystals. It's like that's just maximum galaxy brain. It was blew my mind that they went that route by the end of it all.
Ara also posted, and that's a good reminder that we still had the plan to test running all 4 orbs into the heart as well, like crashing the actual orb into the heart, see if it would detonate and do anything. That was after we were done testing the towers. We were going to do that next, but obviously we didn't have to because that solved the problem.
And then I guess the more interesting thing is that with that information, with the heart, which then floats off and lets you know Alexander's actual inception location, so you can finish the phase, which was a very visually appealing detail, in my opinion. It only took you guys, you woke up the next day, tested that, figured out, and beat it the same day, if I'm recalling, like Friday, on your last pull for the evening.
Yeah, our pulls that last day were very good. Lots of consistent, perfect pulls. But even then, it took the whole day, so... But it was we also had some really fortunate alpha and beta. I think that groups would be surprised at how miraculous our alphas and betas were. You go ahead and Sfia. He's the one who originally brought it to my attention, just how good it was.
Yeah, so because we'd pulled alpha so many times, we knew exactly how it worked. We just didn't know how we were going to learn what we needed to learn. So we got there with the buff, and we one-shot the mechanic with, I think, 3 deaths. Just because what was it?
Shared sentence, hit everyone,
Yes,
killed the 3 lightning.
So we didn't know the
died.
exact positionings. That's all it was. We knew how the strat would work, we just didn't position correctly. We misplayed it. And then we get through the tank buster, and then we see all of beta. And the first time we get there, we see the 2 core mechanics of that fight, or the phase, the end phase, all in one pull. The first time we get back there. And we do it with 8 alive by the time you get to beta. And footage with 8 people alive is the most important. You can't actually make plans on incomplete pull data. So if you have 7 people alive, you can only make guesses, but you can never make concrete plans based on what you see. But having 8 alive just was incredible. And this is where Kio just kind of went Super Saiyan and carried the rest of the fight almost single-handedly. I'm not kidding. He just its mind exploded.
I've rated with
everything
him,
was resolved.
So when we were discussing what to do with the debuffs, we were discussing, we knew the beacon and follow mechanics. We noticed the tethers. Phantom was the one who listed out every member's assignment for that. So it was like, okay, there's 3 non-beacon light marks. The contact prohibition. There's 1 contact regulation buff. There's 3 escape, the escape runaway buffs. There's 1 escape beacon debuff. So we had identified what everyone had, which pairs had tethers, and he listed them all out. And I used that while they were still discussing it to draw up a quick diagram. And it just so happened that my first guess at the diagram of what we were going to position like ended up being what I think is the accepted strat now, which it was very, very close, if not exactly it. And we had 1 dynamic position. We either positioned the east side of the room or the west side of the room, depending on if the robots in the middle were, which one didn't jump. So we sorted that out like basically right away. It was probably within 10 minutes of that pull ending, 15 minutes of that pull ending. I came out with that diagram. We said, this looks pretty good. If anything, I put the robots on the bottom, so we flipped the image, had Cleese do that, and then we just went. I was like, let's do it. And it worked the first time. The first time, everything was correct. I think we had execution errors. We ran into the wall or something. But we were like, this works. This will operate. This will get us through. And there wasn't much else to solve.
We did a little bit of refinement, had 1 pull that went through beta, saw Almighty Judgment, and then I think the next time we were there, we were in Rage. Yeah.
Yeah, because after Fate Calibration Beta, it's essentially golden from Bahamut. It's a tank mechanic, a group split damage mechanic, and a movement mechanic. And then it repeats a couple times, and you gotta die before you're all killed one by one.
And I said Kio carried us in this phase.
Oh
I mean
yeah,
it.
I know what
We
happened.
literally put a marker on his head, and he'd place a marker on the ground, and he'd say, "We're moving like this," and we did it. Nobody else had to use their brain at all. Thoughts per second, just through the floor.
Well,
I just focus on doing damage. That's it.
Well, Kio from what I've heard before this show, Kio definitely went for minimum thoughts per second during your first Enrage cast.
Wait, what?
You didn't stand in a circle.
Oh.
I got real good footage of that.
To be fair, it is important data to know what happens if you don't stand in the circle. But yeah, I walked out. We got there the first time, and I was the only one alive. I was like, "Look, there's a circle. What about this?" And I walked out of it.
It was 5 of us, or 4 of us alive, and you're just like, "It's not standing there. That looks bad," and you didn't, and we died.
What is it? Just like a defamation style explosion, or because I haven't seen what it looks like.
No, so when the thing comes down, it puts a debuff on one person.
Yeah.
And it gives them time something.
Yeah.
I forget. Either way.
Temporal prison?
Temporal, yeah. There's some specific debuff that it puts on you. But it puts that debuff on you and then cages you. But I think the whole theme of it is that you're soaking that and you're being frozen in time and delaying everyone else from getting it, right? But what happens if no one soaks is that it just hits the whole floor and everyone gets frozen in time.
Oh, so you get the normal end of prison enrage animation?
Yeah, what happens to the 8th person happens to everyone straight away. And it's very much like boring, like it's not as cinematic and...
That's ooh-whoa.
Yeah, I mean...
He just freezes you in a place and time. He's like, you're here now.
Yeah. It's just the floor got hit by the thing, Kio wasn't in it, and we're back seeking the piece of reason.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's got to be the worst one because all the music stops when you get frozen, and then all of a sudden it fades to black in here, seeking the piece of, and you're like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's literally he's actually sent you to purgatory, at that point, to the first circle of hell maybe instead. But yeah, that last phase, I mean, it's basically like Titan bombs, like, because you could do a 3-1-2-1, you know, you have to be used to be able to do either or, and then a tank mechanic and split mechanic, and that's it. And then you just got to repeat that with enough DPS and no deaths, or as few as possible. Sorry, Sindolf, and you should be fine.
We went from...
I feel really bad for Sindolf. Jesus Christ.
Don't.
Oh,
he's gotta die.
He's gotta die.
Go ahead, Sfia, say that.
I was just saying he more than deserves every little bit of shit we throw at him, so it's fine.
That's also the ceremony. It happened in Sigmascape. In order for us to kill it, he has to die. And it was totally his fault too, by the way. He didn't die because someone else let him die. He died because he didn't push his cooldowns for the tank plus he got eviscerated.
But you know what? It makes for a great kill story at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, you finished Alexander. Now you get to go back and re-clear it tomorrow.
Yes.
And get
I'm actually
all
really
the
looking
weapons.
forward to that.
Yeah, I'm curious what it'll look like now with full comfort levels. Well,
yeah, and really big amounts of rust because we haven't played since Friday at all. It's gonna be
Trying anything new or keeping same strat, basically?
I think we should probably go prog strat again.
We're going to change one thing. I'm not going to mark myself during Almighty Judgment because it takes people's eyes off of the floor. They're just staring at me, so we're going to mark the
Almighty
floor.
Judgment happened so fucking quick. It seems like
it's
it was
Titan
just...
bombs. It's like it's. I think it's about the same speed as Titan bombs.
It's pretty quick. It's more just knowing the snapshots of when you're supposed to move that makes it a lot easier. And Kio got a really good read on that, like the first time we got there, which is pretty fortunate.
We had 3 people live through the mechanic the first time we got there. They just dodged it correctly, and so we decided to pick one of the 3, and I volunteered to guide the way.
You're the hero, Kio. You always have been.
The hero at running into walls. I literally wiped us for no reason twice.
I mean,
Frog point.
Twice is not that bad. Listen, I've had a dancer situation once or twice too, where you're like, this is a fixed distance. Don't ever. Oh, I just did it. Yeah. Don't worry. Yeah, so that's it. It comes down to world first, and then waiting, 3-4 days for someone else to do it. Was there any shock that it was a streamed world second?
Absolutely, it was a big shock.
Yeah, big shout outs to Moof. We've mentioned them a few times here, and they have been streaming Prague the entire time, and they were front runners from the beginning, alongside One Ace, alongside Arthur's. They were major front runners in the streaming group, and it led to a world second stream. What was the reaction there? Because that's just a few hours ago still at this point.
I was relieved that someone killed it.
Were you more relieved it was someone who streamed it so you could just push the button to make it live? The videos?
Well, partly, yes. But I also kind of wanted the mystery to be a mystery for a little bit longer, It was really cool watching everything unfold the way that it did, and having this sort of this vantage point to watch just everything happen that we already knew. It was a really, really cool experience. Since Prague has been almost as enjoyable as in Prague, which is just, it's so different to anything else I've experienced in this game.
Kio?
I think it's the first time the community's had a chance to collectively prog with a streamer on something so cryptic for such an extended period of time when there was no other information out. I think it was amazing. I mean, it really stepped up the experience in Uwu, where it was the same thing. They got to sort of solve the awaken mechanic with the streamers. I wasn't there for that, sadly, because I was progging. I wasn't able to enjoy it. This time I got to sit there front row and watch, and it was just amazing. And the fact that it was streamed was just all the better, because everybody got to see. It felt like we were sharing our experience even with them, of just seeing those phases for the first time, the overwhelming destruction of some of the phases, like Alpha and Beta in particular, where they just killed you right away, together. It was magnificent. I wish we could have more of that in the future, in terms of just give us that collective community experience where we all get to enjoy it together. So, yeah, it was really something special.
It's also cathartic in a way. Like, I had Haru Glory saying, "Help, give us a hint."
I saw that.
And it's just, no, you guys have to suffer like we suffered. That's only fair.
I do want to, of course, raise the question. Now, obviously, looking over at the World of Warcraft community, Method has made it popular for basically the entire world race to be streamed. But in the Final Fantasy XIV community, there's still very much, and I think it's most apparent in this raid tier versus any other one, that the seclusion of information critical to success is very clearly what led to such a wide gap between the world first and the world second, in this case leading all the way to the world second coming from being streamed, which is just not something the Final Fantasy XIV community has had to deal with at this point. Do you think there is ever a point where Final Fantasy XIV collectively as a community accepts that maybe the most exciting way to do this is all out in the open, like World of Warcraft does it?
I don't disagree that it's the most exciting way, but it's not the most competitive way. And if you're a competitive player, you're going to do it that way.
I agree.
Okay.
I basically, unfortunately, and the first thing that we thought of when we saw that the secret was being streamed was, you've just given up your lead. That's the first thing that most of us thought is, oh, that sucks. It's good that you found it out, but you threw away a lead by sharing this with people. Now everyone will catch up. And that's sort of the pervasive thought of anybody racing, is we don't want our secrets getting out and then someone to use that information to lap us. So, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I don't know what could fix that, honestly. It's a great experience streaming. Don't get me wrong, I would enjoy doing it, but I don't really feel like I could feel like we were being competitive if we were doing that. Not to mention, streaming is distracting in and of itself. There's a specific person whose name I won't mention, but there's a specific person I know that is dramatically affected by whether they're on stream or not. Their performance changes very much, and knowing that they're not isolated, that's not the only person, they're just the most prevalent example, is everybody plays a little bit different when eyes are on you as well, and a lot of times that can be bad for performance. So
I think someone I was in a raid team with when we discussed streaming Prague one time said it best, which was, if it stops any one person from saying anything in Prague, it's not worth it.
Yes, agreed.
It's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, gentlemen, it's about 20 after our normal end time. I can hear my girlfriend walking in, and thus I will wrap up, and I have raid in 10 minutes. So,
exciting.
Before I do that, though, I'd of course like to open the floor to you. We've broken down everything about the fight, about the race, about the streaming, and give you one final outlet. So anything you want to say, a thought, not too many per second, but just some thoughts that you'd like to share before we wrap things up.
Big fan of the Ara Hoshizara fan club. I recommend anybody who's interested in joining. We're getting big really fast. Ara's
in here.
Best guy.
You keep doing your shout outs. I'm gonna go do something real quick. Sorry. Never mind.
Yeah, there's a few people that helped us immensely in this tier that I think deserve all the recognition in the world. That is May and Roses of May FC with just a ton of pots, just literally thousands and thousands of potions for us. Our support team in Cleese and Zeppi were invaluable, and just lots of people who supported us, cheered us on. It's awesome. Support is always appreciated.
Yeah, Cleese in particular, he did an amazing job of taking tension off and making everything so much fun. His little troll posts, his jokes, the gnomed video, everything was it was so much fun. It created this element of laughter in the midst of all the stress and tension that could have been, or that everyone was experiencing. So thanks, Cleese, for everything.
Sly, any last questions you want to ask them before we wrap things up? Because I've taken the reins back from you because my interest.
Nope, that's completely fine. I pretty much got all the answers I was expecting, except one. In general, which to be honest, it's a dumb fuck thing to do. I think, in my opinion. Again, my opinion. Pugging this fight.
Oh God, Sly! I know why you're asking. I'm Sly. Just don't.
No. I've given up on this thought. I tell people not to do this. I tell people to find it fucking static, or just don't. Just fucking don't. But people will pug this fight. Any words of advice or words of wisdom to those who choose to pug this fight?
Enjoy it. It is, in my opinion, the most... No, the fight as it is. Maybe not the pug experience. I'll leave that one out of it. Enjoy the fight for what it is, because I think that is the most enjoyable fight in the game. And if you're having a miserable time with pugs, have fun with the fight instead.
Agreed. If I'd say any advice, don't join a party finder that doesn't have strats laid out ahead of time, or at the very least isn't willing to discuss strats ahead of time. If they're insta-pulling without talking too much, it's probably a bad sign, and a waste of your time. Pug-specific stuff is just voice comms. If they're not mandating voice comms, it's probably a waste of your time, because this is a communication-heavy fight. Other than that, we should try to iron out some public strats. Definitely. I think we already have some. The JPs already have a bunch. So if we can set some kind of common ground for strategy as soon as possible, pugs will get a lot better.
Just don't get hit.
Our community has historically not been very good at unifying, except under the Xeno strat. So maybe Xeno can help us out. Give us Xeno strats for
Even that, nobody wants to unify. It's the number one thing I noticed, dude. When I've raided in Japan for
you cut out there, Happy.
Yeah, you cut out completely.
Oh, I cut out? Really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
It's Discord. It's been.
Oh yeah, probably. It's been flickering on and off. Yeah, I plugged in. I didn't plug. I went with Haru and crew in Japan for 09, 10, and 11, and they were still sending the Paladin off in the distance with Hallowed on Pantocrator 2, and I'm like, that's because they agreed on this early, and they said, I don't care. We, on the other hand, spent 45 minutes talking about how to do Chaos Orb Phase. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit rough to get people in one fighting stance, I suppose.
I nominate the Kio Pug friendly strats.
Oh, I'm not.
So when are we gonna get that guy, Kio?
No, we need the
man,
police
I'm
guys.
So bad at writing guys. Maybe if Cleese is willing to champion it, but I know he's pretty exhausted too, so hope to see.
Yeah.
But I think there are some pug friendly strats out there. Some of mine probably could be adjusted a little bit, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, the label one member and have everyone follow. I don't think that works for Wormhole. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and assume that doesn't work for Wormhole. Or most of them.
Not.
All right. Well, I'm about 5 minutes till raid's supposed to start. I'll probably be a little late, but we are gonna do a little wrap up now. For those of you who weren't here during pre-show, we had some technical issues getting the stream set up. For some reason, my OBS would not properly capture the cameras, even though it was doing it 2 weeks ago. But don't give me that face, Slyh. And so I'm not gonna be able to swap to the individual scenes. I just checked them, and they've been somehow screwed up in the last 2 hours, even though nothing's changed since it's the same settings I did before. So with that, I'm gonna let you guys do your sign-offs on the main page here, and yeah, we can do that, and then we can wrap things up. So Kio, where can everyone find you at?
I think it's _Kionu_ on Twitter. I do check that fairly frequently. My Discord is Kio and then #00001. You can find me chatting on the balance, and here and there, but mostly on the balance. And yeah, and then my stream is just twitch.tv/Kionu, which we'll be streaming the Reclear tomorrow.
Nice. All right. Thank you. Yes, and best of luck with that. I'll be tuning in probably while I'm in the middle of suffering myself, just so I can suffer less from watching you guys do. Sfia, where can they find you at, Master Black Mage Man?
Right underneath, you can see the @FFXIV on Twitter. My Twitch is twitch.tv/Sfia. Yes, that's all it is now. And my YouTube, Sfia Perian. 2 words. Just my in-game name. And my Discord, of course, Sfia #3133.
You're the first people to ever share your Discords on the show.
Really?
Yeah, no one's ever done it.
I have it on my Twitter just publicly. Always open for questions.
There you go. And Slyh, they know where they can find us probably by now, but I guess we should do ours too. You know, they don't really care at this point. We haven't beaten it yet, so it doesn't. I just don't really care. But it's Slyh. Where can they find you at? I guess
Twitch.tv/Slyh, aka_Greyfox, Twitter @Slythefox, Facebook Slyh, aka_Greyfox, Instagram Slyh, aka_Greyfox. These next couple of weeks are going to be busy because I'm moving. So
yeah. So let me know if we need to move. Obviously, to let me know if we need to move shows.
Yeah, I'll let you know ahead of time.
But anyone watching, I hope you made it to the end of the show and you know this, so you don't ask me when the next show is, because you're gonna ask anyway, and it could change. Just so you know, current plan's next Tuesday, but there's no promises. Good luck with that move, by the way.
Thank you.
I know that life. Anyway. You can find me, Mr. Happy1227, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, all of those places. I haven't posted much videos in the last few weeks, only a couple of prog-related videos. Probably post another one when I get to Perfect Alexander more consistently, or at all, at this rate. And then one for the finish, one for the kill. What happened?
It'll happen.
Sooner or later.
Wormhole's a matter of time.
I just need to stop getting 3 in Wormhole. That's it. I just need that to stop happening. I don't want 3 or 4. I don't even want 1 or 2. I want 5, 6, 7, or 8. Every time, give me all 4 of them. I've got End of Vaughn. I've got 3 stacks. I'll figure it out. Okay.
Half Legend V2.
Kio, don't. No, we can't. We can't do. It can't come down to that again, Kio. I can't. Kio's already like, what are you doing Wednesday? I know what I'm doing. Oh my god. Yeah, we'll get it done sooner or later. I might be out of power for anyone who doesn't know Wednesday or Thursday. Currently, it looks like I won't be, but they're doing power shutoffs to California again. So there's.
They sent the all clear for the entire.
Yeah, I have a similar issue, but it should be okay.
We got an all clear. I don't trust them for shit after last time, but right now we've got an all clear. So we're hoping for the best. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for the show. Thank you for talking to us about Alexander Ultimate. Congratulations
so
on
much
your
for coming by.
massively in the lead world first kill, which has been amazing for me to watch day by day. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week for hopefully, if all things go well, A or Zivia, where Sly and I get to look like more idiots than we normally do. Sly, you've won. We still look like idiots, but you've won like the last 5.
Because I actually studied.
Yeah, that helps.
Studied.
Yeah. I didn't study throughout most of college, and I had like a 3.83 GPA. It doesn't work here as well, I find.
Yeah.
So, it's probably because I played 11 at the time, and I was bored, and I could just read my notes while I was waiting for things to happen. All right. But with that, thank you. We will go into a very short post show, and then we'll see you next week. Thank you, and until then, take care.
See you next week.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Abs.